Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
Betty, can I ask you a favor? A good acquaintance of hers, as always. Yes, ask, what do you want? She always responded to her request. Could you do a tour for me? She asked her. Where are you going today? Betty didn't understand her. I have to leave right away. So can you do it or not? Her friend was standing over her. Of course I will. Why do you ask? I won't leave visitors without a guide. The girl always came to the rescue. Betty worked in the local museum, which was the main attraction of the city. The girl was in good standing, so her salary was good. Betty never thought she would ever work in a museum. Yes, in school she liked history. In general, the last classes were humanities. But she couldn't go in that direction. She went in a slightly different direction. Her mom, who worked in a bank, forced the girl to get in touch with finance, so Betty had to drop all the humanities subjects and go to study finance. I don't want to study at this college, she told her mom. You'll thank me later, she told her. For what? For the years spent just like that in an educational institution, the girl wondered. Why, just like that? This education means that you will get a diploma, even if you have one diploma already forward, the woman told her. But Betty couldn't understand it. It was a phylactery to her. All these figures, postings, tasks, debits, credits, and all the rest. She only went there for the sake of a check mark, so that the teachers could see that she was studying. I won't live in the dormitory from the first day, she told her mother. The girl was adamant, so the woman agreed with her. Well, let us get you an apartment, her mother told her. Betty's family was not poor, so they could afford it. All 3 years of study, the girl lived in a rented apartment. She practically did not socialize with anyone because she considered herself above it all. After graduation, the mother insisted that the girl went on to higher education. How can you not understand that I do not want this? Almost stomped her daughter's feet. How can you not understand such a word? You must, in the same tone of voice her mother spoke to her. In the end, Betty realized that parents help her a lot, so she could not go against their wishes and entered the institute. It happened by accident. With friends, they went to the city where the educational institution was located. Stop, Betty asked then as they drove past it. She got out of the car, walked through the main doors. A guidance counselor met her there. Betty said she wanted to enroll and was escorted to the admissions office. They asked her a few questions, looked at her previous diploma, and that was it. She was in. Moreover, no matter how negligent she was about enrollment, both in college and in the institute, she enrolled on a budgetary basis. She did not need to pay any money, and the girl was proud of it. When she studied at the institute, she went to work in a financial structure where she started to pay a good salary. If in their city the average wage was one amount of earnings, then Betty received an order of magnitude more, and once when receiving another paycheck, and its bonus and some other bonuses, Betty went to the store, bought their different things. She came home where she lived with her parents and set a rich table. What's today's feast? Her mother was surprised when she saw the pickles on the table. I want to thank you very much, Betty told her, and she wasn't being unreasonable. What was the occasion? Mother didn't understand, but she called her father and they sat down together. If you hadn't pushed me into that financial college then, I would have waited a year, and after that I would have gone back to the same college I wanted. I'd have graduated, whether it was in foreign languages, history, or something else, and then I have been assigned to a school, and now I'd be sitting in that school getting cents, she told the woman. Well, at last you understand, her mother told her, and they hugged and then sat down at the table. When Betty started making enough money, it wasn't enough every time. She wanted more. But she couldn't jump above her head here. Salary, bonuses, some bonuses at the end of the year. That's all she could earn. The girl started looking for some other part-time jobs to give her a safety cushion, but she couldn't connect the two. Why did you go there? Her mom told her at home. Mom, I'm 30 years old. I go where I want, she told her. Think about what people will say about you. The woman was always afraid of being judged. So what do I care what they say about me? It's my life. I'm 30 years old, and I'm still a single woman. They'll probably laugh at that more than they'll laugh at the fact that I went out there. They were always talking about it. Betty couldn't stand it anymore, but she didn't have the money to rent an apartment or take out a mortgage, and she hadn't saved up for her own yet. One day she was at work and a woman who worked as a museum director came in. "Hello, Angelica." Betty said hello. "Hello, hello, are you still sitting here, locked up? You have no interest?" Laughed the one who worked with cultural values. "Oh, you'd think you'd have so many interesting things to do." Betty started talking to her. "If you come once, you'd realize there's a lot to see." Angelica always said that to everyone. "Are you inviting me?" Betty asked. "Why not? Come and bring your friends." The director was always happy to see people in his institutions. "Why, we'll come," the girl promised. And already on the weekend, she and another group of people were in the realm of antique objects. "Do you want to see everything here yourself, or do you need to be told?" said the director of the museum. "If we can, we'll see for ourselves," said Betty. When she was at school, she was a local historian, so she knew a lot about the town, the local factory, and everything that had happened here. "Let's go to this hall," she called to her friends and girlfriends. Here she began to show various exhibits, told about personalities, who and where worked, about the local plant, which used to be the only one in the world. She knew all this from her school days. Angelica stood at the time and watched everything that was going on. And as people began to leave, she stopped Betty. "Darling, why did you go into finance?" she asked her. "It's what you study," Betty replied. "Wouldn't you like to work here in the museum?" Angelica asked her. "In a museum?" Betty was surprised. "I don't have a degree, do I?" "That's all right. You'll get one in time. Your economic degree is enough for me to make you a tour guide," her boss told her. "I need to think about it," went home Betty. "Why are you so pensive?" her mom asked her at home. "They want me to work in a museum as a tour guide," she told her slowly. "You what? What museum? When you are 60 years old, you will go to your museum and now sit on a good job with a good position." My mother began to walk around the room. "That's why I was upset," my daughter confessed to her. "Don't even think about the museum, about the guide. What else?" She was going to the museum. The woman was indignant. Not even 5 minutes passed during that evening as the mother started this topic again. On Monday, Angelica was again at Betty's work, and again she offered her the same thing she had offered on the weekend. "What kind of salary will I get?" she asked her. The woman immediately scribbled on a piece of paper and added a few pluses. "What are these pluses?" Betty wondered. "They are after-hours work, paid services, so-called," the principal explained. "If you do the math, it adds up to more than I get here." Betty wondered. "That's how it works. You just don't have enough time and hands," the principal confirmed her words. "Well," decided Betty, and in a few weeks, she was an employee of the museum. Her mother and the locals who knew her told her, but she didn't listen to anyone. Already in the first month, she got as much as she would not have gotten working in a financial institution. Betty began to organize holidays, and she simply liked this work. She went there as if it were a holiday, and wise people say that if you love your job, you won't work a single day. When Betty's mother saw how much she was earning, she didn't speak ill of the institution anymore. Now, on the contrary, she praises it in front of other people, bringing sightseers there. So did Betty, found some new people who work with her to this day. "Mom, I bought us vouchers. Soon we will fly with you on vacation," said the daughter to the woman. "Well, wow," she was surprised. "You see, and if I had stayed at that job, when would we still fly with you?" The girl was proud of herself that she could not only earn money, but also take her mother on vacation. She could afford more than that now, and that couldn't help but feel good about it. But there was not in her life one man's shoulder, and on this occasion, Betty was very upset. She thought about it, but she couldn't do anything about it. Often there were excursionists who came to the museum, who were interested in Betty, took her phone number, and even sometimes they called back or corresponded. But in the end, nothing serious ever happened. Why am I so unhappy? She'd sit at home and talk to her mom, Betty. Every woman has her own age. If there is nothing now, then everything will be soon, the woman assured her. When will it be soon? I'm already 35. When will it be soon at 50, when I won't be able to do anything? She told her. The mother only sighed and stroked her daughter's head. Betty continued to live with her parents. The money in the accounts was saved up. She had enough, but not enough to buy and make repairs in her apartment. And there was no strong need for it. So Betty took her time. I saw your classmate today. My mom came home and told Betty this information. What classmate? She didn't understand. Selena, the woman looked at her. What's Selena? She lives in another city. Betty was surprised. She knew that Selena, with whom they used to be best friends and lived in the same yard, immediately after school left for another city. She met a young man there, had a baby. What was she doing in their town now? But decided not to think about it and dial her. When the friends called, Selena immediately invited Betty to visit. Why are you here? Why did you come? It turns out that Selena now also lived here with her daughter and mother in the same apartment. It turned out that she and her roommate all bad. He never called her to marry, and now they had a big fight, and Selena just left. But she didn't just stay in town. She got a job in the same place where Betty used to work. You won't believe it. I worked there for a few years, and now you come to take my place, laughed her friend at her. From then on, the girls resumed their friendship again. They were doing well. Now every night Selena and Betty met. They couldn't get enough of talking, telling each other what they had during the time they hadn't seen each other. 2 years passed, and suddenly Selena told Betty she was going to live in New York. What are you doing there? Betty didn't understand then, having worked at the museum all that time. She wouldn't have refused to take a job like that in New York. But when she looked at the salaries, she realized that there was nothing for her there. The money was almost the same, but the standard of living in New York was several times higher. When Selena got settled in, she began to invite Betty to visit her. I can't make it, she told her. It was work or something else. The friends could not meet for a year. So when Betty took a vacation to visit her friend, she bought plane tickets, flew in, they met. They had a very nice evening. The next day, Selena had to go to work. Can I take care of your place? Said Betty. She wanted to do something nice for her friend. Yes, of course. I haven't cleaned in ages, Selena told her. So from the morning, Betty started generalizing. First, she removed the carpets in the kitchen and room, cleaned the floors and windows, and then began to pick up the trash throughout the apartment. When there was a lot of garbage, she decided it was time to go to the dumpster and throw it all away. The girl went outside. When she went to the trash cans, one bag was not carried, it fell apart, and all its contents fell to the ground. Betty went out with the whole bag, shook it all out, and came back for the contents she had just dumped in the middle of the yard. Can I help you, young lady? A man of indeterminate age and appearance approached her. No, I'll do it myself, she told him. He squatted down and began to pick up everything that was lying on the ground with his hands. When it was done, together they dragged the bag to the tank and threw it away. Thank you for your help, Betty thanked him. She saw that the man was dressed in some rags. The girl decided to thank him for his help. Can I buy you something to eat? She asked him. You're so kind, he stammered. If it's not too much trouble, you can buy me some tea. Okay, Betty looked at the windows where Selena lived and at the diner that was in the yard. She decided that rather than carry something from home, she'd better take him there. Let's go, she pointed with her eyes to the cafe. I wouldn't say no, he said. They went there, talking about something. Betty ordered some cakes and tea. When the man started eating, she smiled. Sorry, don't mind me. I haven't eaten anything in 2 days, he admitted to her. No, it's okay. You're welcome. She was pleased that she could do something kind. What's your name? He asked her. Betty, she answered. And I'm John, he said with his mouth full. Nice to meet you, John. She looked around the cafe and smiled. What's so funny? He still hadn't chewed. No, nothing, she said aloud, and thought to herself, if her mom could see what kind of place she was sitting in right now, or worse, who she was sitting with. You're so kind, Betty, John said to her as he finished his cake and drank his tea. It's all right, she told him, and they were about to leave the cafe, but she could see that John wasn't going to leave her. Can we sit at the table? He offered her. I won't refuse. There's nothing to do anyway. I'd already done all the housework. Now I need to pass the time until my friend came. She looked at her new acquaintance and realized that he was not old, although there was unshaven. There were some scars and wrinkles. Would you like me to give you a little tour? He offered her. Let's do it, she agreed. And as they walked down the streets, John told her where and how and what was on those streets, what was in those buildings. And when Betty told him that she also worked at the museum as a tour guide, he was surprised. Wow, I never would have guessed that, he stared at her. Why? She was surprised. I don't know, you're so, like high society or something, he told her. Thank you. That's nice to hear, she laughed. Why did you come here to stay? He asked her that already. Yes, I have a childhood friend with whom we studied together in the same class. That's where I came to visit her. Perhaps she told him the truth for nothing, but for some reason, Betty was so penetrated by this man, she did not understand why. They walked until the evening, and then he walked her to the yard where they had met today. I still have time before my friend comes. Maybe we can go to a cafe. She suggested him because she realized that it had been quite a long time, and he had not eaten anything again. If you're offering me that, I won't refuse. He didn't become modest. So Betty and John went back to the same diner, where they again ordered pies and tea. And now Betty joined John, for they had spent the whole day outside and had worked up an appetite. You know, if somebody had told me this morning that I'd be sitting in this diner, I'd have laughed in that person's eyes. If my mom finds out, then no matter how old I am, I'm just going to get a lecture like that from her. Betty wanted to say something else, but after saying that, she started laughing. I'm so pleased that you're talking to me openly, John said with his mouth full again. Well, what have I got to hide? Today we met, and tomorrow I will go to my city, and tomorrow you will stay here, and maybe we will never see each other again, she told him at the same time. Betty took a bite of pie and realized that not so bad pies are made here. What did you like? He saw her reaction to the pie. You know, not bad. She looked at the filling. I told you it was good. He finished his pie, finished his tea, and they went outside again. Betty was ashamed to admit to herself that she didn't want to part with this man. She was interested in him. He knew a lot. He told interesting stories. They reached the entrance, said goodbye, and she went in. When she entered the apartment, she realized that she had never cleaned it up. The carpets were rolled up. The floors were unwashed. Only the trash had been thrown out. The girl started to finish everything quickly, but by the time her friend arrived, she hadn't finished anything. Shit, Selena, I'm sorry, I started cleaning but didn't finish, she said, looking guiltily at her friend. What have you been doing all day? I don't understand. You won't believe what happened to me, Betty told her. Why wouldn't I believe it? Tell her I will, she told her. They went into the kitchen. Everything was cleaned up. All that was left was to lay the carpet. The friends did so and began to prepare supper. Well, watch Selena. She wondered what had happened to Betty during the day. I met someone, her girlfriend told her. What kind of person? Selena didn't understand her. Where did you go? She's lived here for years and never met anyone, and this one just arrived yesterday, and today she's already met someone. You'll laugh, but today, when I went to take out the trash, my bag broke, and a homeless man helped me pick up the trash, Betty said. And for some reason, at those words, she was very ashamed. What? Like a homeless guy? Selena laughed. Such ordinary, homeless young man. He sat in your yard, and after he helped me, I offered to thank him, took him to a cafe, gave him tea and cakes, told Betty how they spent the day with him. And how did you not think to bring him to my apartment? Perplexed friend. Well, I don't know, Betty reflected. It hadn't even occurred to her. Selena went to the window. She looked out into the courtyard, but naturally there was no one there anymore. She furrowed her eyebrows. She turned to her friend. Look, Betty, I realize we're old and we don't have any young men, but you can't stoop to walking around with a homeless guy, Selena told her friend. Shit, Selena, if I had known you would judge me, I never would have told you this. Betty was already regretting opening up to her friend. Come on, it's okay, she said. The next day, Selena went to work again, and Betty had nothing to do. She decided that if she met John again, she wouldn't miss the opportunity to talk to him. She went out into the yard, but he wasn't there. I see, I'm such an idiot. It's cold outside at night. He should have slept here, she said to herself. Betty decided to arrange a cultural program for herself and went to the museums that were in the area. In the evening, returning home, she would like to meet with yesterday's acquaintance, but it did not happen, and the girl was a little upset. Why are you like this? Selena was already home. Is that why he doesn't come to your yard anymore? The girl asked. Betty, come to your senses. You said yourself that he was a homeless vagrant without money. Why do you need him? Calm down. Selena didn't know how else to calm her down. You don't understand anything. That's not the main thing in a person. You're acting like my mom. Betty was sad that no one understands her. Oh, let's close the topic. I do not want to talk about it anymore. And especially, I do not want me to call me tomorrow your mother and said that I introduced you to some bum, was categorical Selena. Well, and do not talk. Did not want to Betty this. She stood near the window, looking at the yard, but there was no one there. So Selena came up behind her. The day after tomorrow you're leaving, so tomorrow I'll take the day off and we'll go to a coffee shop. I agreed, the one in your backyard, Betty told her. Why are you like that? We'll go out, we'll have fun. You came to visit me, not him. She pointed her head to the yard. Okay, I'm sorry, Betty told her, but she was sad that not only could she not find a relationship with normal people, but even a homeless man wouldn't look at her. The next day they slept with Selena until lunchtime. After that they woke up and started to get ready. Selena had a lot of plans for today. They went to the Hermitage. It was unreal to go through all the rooms there. They spent practically 5 hours there, but they didn't really see anything. They saw some paintings, visited some rooms of Catherine the Great, and also went down to the ground floor to look at the mummy, about which many people talked. After that, the friends went to a restaurant where they sat until it closed, and then they went home. How did you like today? Selena asked her. Every day would be like this, Betty told her. So come back often. We'll spend a lot of days like this with you, Selena suggested. As she looked out the window, she wondered if coming more often would give her more opportunities to meet John. Turns out she had not only thought about it, she had said his name out loud. What? Which John? Selena asked her. Never mind, Betty answered her. They reached the courtyard where Selena lived, got out near the entryway. BT heard her friends. The girl recognized his voice. She looked back, a smile on her face. John, hi, what are you doing here? She was surprised, and then moved her big eyes to her friend. So there he is, the one, your mysterious John. Celine looked upside down at him. Yes, meet my friend. This is my friend who I came here to see, she told the man. Nice to meet you. He looked at her and smiled. That's it, let's go home, took Selena's hand in Betty's. No, Betty took her hand away from her friend's arm. What do you mean, no? She didn't understand. I'll stay here and talk to him. She didn't care who thought about her, what he would say to her, what she would say to him, what would happen. The important thing was that she had a 5 a.m. flight, and now it was 12 o'clock, and they had a few hours to talk. Beatty, I'm asking you out then, he told her. Ha ha ha, grabbed her stomach Selena, a homeless vagrant asking my friend, who can afford anything, out on a date. Still laughing, she turned around and walked toward the entryway. When she had already grabbed the doorknob, she turned back to them. Go on, Betty told her, I'll call you. Suit yourself. Selena walked into the entryway and went to her floor. Betty didn't know where all this courage came from in her. Before, she would have sloughed her eyes and followed her friend home. But now, she was walking with a complete stranger to a simple diner that was open 24 hours a day. It was the same cafe they'd been to yesterday afternoon. Why did you agree to go with me? He asked the girl. And why shouldn't I have gone with you? First of all, you are a human being. And second of all, I don't care about your social status, she muttered to him. But on the one hand, it is right, and on the other hand, it is not accepted in our society, he reasoned. I don't care what is or isn't accepted. I told you yesterday. Today I know you and tomorrow I don't know. He opened the door for her and they entered the cafe. Betty and John sat down at the same table where they had sat the day before, placed their order. Although the girl didn't want to eat because she and Selena had just been in the restaurant, but remembering the taste of yesterday's pies, she couldn't deny herself not to eat one. How did it happen that she became like this? She asked him. It's a very complicated story that I don't want to remember, he looked at her. And yet, I wonder what can happen to a person. Betty chewed her pie. But don't you know how it is in life? He told her. I know that people lose their memory, go away, get their papers taken away, and all that sort of stuff. She shrugged, because she'd never thought about it. Did you ever think, for example, that a woman could sue for everything? He stopped chewing and looked at Betty. So in your life it's happened? She asked him. Well, practically. Only this woman wasn't my wife. She was my companion. He sighed heavily. And what happened? Betty wanted details. She and I had a business together. We started from scratch, both of us young, ambitious. We wrote a business plan, invested the money we had at the time. Things started to work out. And when 10 years later, we had everything, I don't know how it happened. After one banquet, we stayed in a hotel, had a few drinks, talked, went up to the room, slept together. I understood that it was in a fit of passion, but she thought that between us a great love. He sighed again and stopped talking. And you didn't like her, why didn't you stay with her? Betty didn't understand. I've always been a stickler for the fact that you can't have relationships with companions and in general at work, because personal relationships and work relationships are two completely different natures. That's what I told her the next morning. She didn't understand me. He sighed again. He was silent. So what happened next? Betty had already grown to like this man, not just trust, but pity. And she didn't want to part with him and go somewhere else. It turned out that everything we bought, she had done, and she had done it on some front persons. When I later asked her why she did it, she started telling me some nonsense that she was afraid that I could take away something from her. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. Now it all happened. It all went away. I sued. She paid me some compensation, which was not enough for anything. And now I'm here, he told her. Maybe you need some help, she asked him. What can you offer me? He smiled back. I don't know. If you have a head on your shoulders, you can make a big capital out of 3 pennies. Do you have any education? She shrugged her shoulders, not knowing which option to throw on. Of course I have, he shrugged his shoulders. But what's the use of it? I've never worked in the profession. Yes, the main thing is to have a bright head. Betty herself didn't notice how she put her hands on his. He noticed the gesture. Are you sure? He made eye contact with her hands. Oh, sorry, she raised them. No, I don't mind as long as you're okay, John grinned. I have a plane this morning. I can't talk to you here for long. She wrote him her address and phone number on a piece of paper, if it's okay. Come and see what you can do. I work at this address right here. You can come right over there. You'll be fine. John and Betty got up from the table. She promised him a lot, shook his hand, and walked out of that cafe. She walked across the courtyard, her back feeling John's eyes on her. She wanted to turn around, throw herself into his arms, and stay there forever, but Betty restrained herself. She walked up to the floor and didn't understand what was happening to her, how she could fall for such a man. Well, finally, I thought, already you will not come back, greeted and did not sleep for Selena. However, I'm not coming back. I've got my stuff here, pointed to Betty's suitcase. Yeah, but it looked to me like you've been a bit of a mess lately, showed her friend gestured, twirling her finger at her temple. Selena, at least you don't judge me, her friend asked. She gathered all her things, hugged her friend, hailed a cab, and headed to the airport. On the way, she thought a lot about her new acquaintance, what would happen next, whether he would call or not, or maybe he would come. Betty took her seat on the airplane. She looked out the porthole window, mentally saying goodbye to this city for a while. Not even 2 hours later, she was already going down the ramp in her own city. It was a joyful feeling. Mom, I'm home. She entered the apartment. Hi. The woman came out into the corridor. She looked at her daughter and waited for the story. I want coffee. Betty went into the kitchen. She put the kettle on and turned to her mother. Tell me how you went. She sat down on a stool. It's all right, the girl smiled. Why are you so happy? The woman didn't understand. I'm telling you, everything is fine. She poured boiling water into her mug. And what about the details? The mother wanted her daughter to tell everything in order. Selena lives normally, works, went with her to museums, went to a restaurant, said Betty general phrases. I see, I can't get anything out of you, the woman said. And what do you want? Surprised daughter raised her eyebrows, all as usual. Betty did not want to tell her mother about John in advance. What if he doesn't come and doesn't call? And she'll only stir up a hornet's nest. No, Mom shook her head and went into her room. Now I'll drink coffee and go to sleep, because all night did not sleep, said her daughter in the back. The woman didn't react in any way. Betty did as she pleased. She sat briefly in the kitchen, checked the messages on her phone, but there was nothing there. Clearly, it was early morning. No one could have texted yet. After that, the girl, as she wanted, went to her room to get some sleep. She was so tired that she had no sooner touched her head to the pillow than she fell asleep. She slept practically until the evening. When she woke up, she started to get ready for tomorrow. She had to go to work. "How was your rest?" Angelica asked her. She was interested in everything. "Good." Just now Betty thought she could have gotten John's phone number herself. The next thing she thought was, what if he didn't even have a phone? Since she was paying for the cakes and tea, he didn't have any money. "Betty," she heard the principal shouting loudly. "Ah, what?" She turned to her. "What are you thinking about that you can't hear anything around you?" She stood beside her. "Don't mind her. I just didn't get enough sleep." She didn't want anyone bothering her right now. "Selena, hi, how are you?" She called her friend. If she couldn't go there herself anytime soon, she'd have to ask her for help. "Hi, I'm fine at work." She was surprised, since they had just talked last night. "Listen, can I ask you something?" She was embarrassed, but she had no one else to turn to. "Go ahead," Selena exhaled. She knew what her friend wanted to ask her. "Can you buy a phone and give it to John?" She blurted out like a machine gun because she didn't want anyone to know she was helping him. "Oh, friend, you're crazy." Selena couldn't stop marveling at the things her friend was doing. "You will." Betty wanted to make sure. "Yes, you'll have to," Selena exhaled. "Thank you," smiled the girl. "In the evening, everything will be clear," disconnected her friend. After that, Betty's mood lifted, as well as her efficiency. When the director saw it, she calmed down and went to her office, and the girl continued her work in the hall. She was ready to roll mountains. It was so good in her soul. In the evening, when she got home, she waited for 2 hours to pass, the time difference when her girlfriend had to come home from work. "Hello." The phone didn't even ring. "Wow," wondered the girlfriend. "It's just the phone was in my hand," admitted Betty. "Right," said the cherished word Selena. "What?" "I didn't understand at first." "Numbers. I bought a phone and a STIM card." She began to dictate. "Did you get everything?" Betty asked when she had written it all down. "Sure, you can call, assuming your John knows how to handle those machines," the friend sighed. "Thank you," mouthed the girl. She stared at the phone. She couldn't believe she was about to talk to him again. She stared at the phone for a few more minutes, then dialed the number. It immediately buzzed. "Hi, Betty." She heard a man's voice. "How did you know it was me?" she wondered. "Well, who else could it be? If Selena gave me the phone, I shouldn't have done that," he reasoned calmly. "John, I'm so glad to hear from you." She didn't care that they were at a distance. The main thing was that she could hear him and communicate with him. "I'm glad to hear from you too," he replied. "Where are you now?" she asked him. "Why do you need it?" He was surprised. "Just, you're not cold," Betty clarified. "No, I'm fine," John assured her. "How are you doing? Are you coming to see me?" The girl decided to take the bull by the horns. "Are you sure you want to talk to me? It's not easy." It's as if he wanted to protect her from something bad. "I don't know what you've got on my mind, but I really care about you and what happens to you," she admitted to him. "Okay, I don't know when, but I can come visit you," John told her. "Look, let me wire the money to Selena and she'll give it to you," she suggested to him. "And you're not afraid I'll misspend it?" He wondered at the girl's naivety. "No," she smiled. After that, for a week, BT did whatever needed to be done. She called Selena, told her everything. She was shocked, but she knew that if her friend decided something, she could not change her mind. "Are you sure I should buy tickets for him myself?" she asked. "Listen," and I did not ask, "in documents he has?" For the first time thought about it, Betty. "Why do you ask me that?" The girlfriend was amazed. "When you meet him, please ask him," the caller asked. "Agreed. And what if I don't?" Selena wondered. "Then we'll think about it," thought Betty. But the girl couldn't wait for Selena to meet John. She dialed his number herself. "Hi, I can't wait," she said hello to him. "Hello." He was a little surprised. He wasn't expecting her call. "John, do you have your passport?" She held her breath. "No," he gave her grief. "How could it be?" The girl couldn't believe it. "Actually, I do, but I pawned it one winter when I had no place to sleep. So I pawned it overnight," he confessed. "That's nonsense. Give me the number and I'll buy it back," Betty said. "I'm not sure you want all this." He began his song again. "Look, I'm doing all this in my sober mind, which means no one's forcing me," she assured him. "Okay." He started telling her the phone number and address. "Wait," she said and pressed the hang up button. Hello, hello. You don't know me? I'm calling from John. She dialed the phone number and started gibbering. Oh, you probably need a passport, guessed the man on the other end of the line. Yes, I want to pay for it. Betty was silent. Okay, he said the amount. Wow. The girl gasped at the amount. What do you want? It's been almost a year. Count the interest. He smirked into the phone. Good. Dictate where to transfer. Waited for Betty. Who are you always talking to? Her mom came into her room. Whoever I want to talk to, she turned to her. By now, she had already written down everything she needed. Now, all that was left was to send the transfer, call John or Selena to pick up the document. Betty had done everything and was waiting for the person she had just spoken to send her a picture of the passport so she could buy the tickets herself. John, I've done everything. You just need to pick up the document, she called him. And why do you need all this? He didn't understand. Come on, we'll meet and then we'll figure it out, she asked him. Okay, he agreed with the girl. Betty bought him tickets. In 3 days, he was to be at her place. Hello. She called from an ad for an apartment for rent. Yes, we rent the apartment, but only for a long term. And it is desirable to make a prepayment for 6 months, or at least 3 months, the woman told her. Thank you, I will call you back. The girl was not satisfied with this option. Then she called a few more ads, but found nothing that would suit her. At the last moment, Betty decided that she would rent an apartment. There was no problem with this option. She managed to make a quick arrangement. Initially, she paid for 2 weeks because she didn't know how things would work out with John. Hi, she called John in the evening. Hi, he answered her. All right, the tickets are bought. All you have to do is get to the airport and I'll meet you there, she told him. Thank you. John didn't know what to say to her. You'll thank me later. She couldn't tell what feelings she had in her heart, whether she was happy that she was helping a man, or whether she was happy that a man was coming to her. Angelica, can I have today off for tomorrow? She said to the principal. Why, do you have something urgent to do? She asked. Yes, a friend is coming to me. I have to meet him. I've rented a place for him. Take him there, put him up. She was telling the truth. A friend is good. Bring him to the museum. Angelica was happy for her employee. I will, the woman smiled back. So, are you letting me go? She asked again, because that was all she was worried about. Sure, you'll work it off later, she winked at her. In the morning, Betty was in no hurry to go anywhere. Why are you at work? Mom wondered. I have a friend coming over today, she told her. What friend? Mom was shocked. I met John when I was in New York, and today he's coming to visit me, she told her mother, only now beginning to tell her the truth. Why didn't you tell me before? Where he's going to live? Mom had a lot of questions. I rented him a place to stay. Betty was not used to lying, so now she was telling the truth. Why waste money on someone else? He could stay with us. The woman resented. Oh, Mom, calm down. I'll decide everything myself. I know everything. Betty once again looked at herself in the mirror and left the apartment. Should I expect you tonight? Her mom asked her through the open door. Probably not, she replied, but I have my keys if I come over. Maida hailed a cab and drove to the airport. There she couldn't wait for that plane to arrive, and when they announced its landing, she stood looking at her new acquaintance. John, she saw him from a distance. He was walking. He didn't have any luggage. Hi, he came up to her. Let's go. They got into a cab and drove to where Betty had rented him a place. They were both silent on the way. Why don't you say something? She turned to him. What should I say? I don't know what this whole thing is about. What difference does it make what city I'm going to live in? He told her. Listen, you're not a pauper. You have a head on your shoulders. I hope you have your diploma with you. She examined his pockets. They were, but not so big. From one of them, he took out a piece of paper. She looked. It was a copy of the diploma. All right, at least that's it, she smiled. They drove to the apartment and settled in. So, you'll need some things. I see you don't have anything with you. Let's go to the store. She took his hand and pulled him to the door. Maybe you can go alone? He felt uncomfortable, like he was embarrassing the woman. Okay, wait for me here then. She was willing to do anything for him. Betty came out of the driveway. There was a chain store on the side of the house, so she went in. She bought everything she needed: toothbrush, toothpaste, razor, soap. T-shirts, underwear, socks, the essentials. When she passed by the grocery department, she thought she had forgotten all about food. The woman bought meat, pasta, bread, salt, sugar, tea, put everything in a bag at the cash register, paid, and went back to John. Here I am, she walked into the apartment. Why so much? He saw the huge bag she had in both hands. Here are the essentials, she said, and started unpacking and preparing the food. John by this time had gone to the bathroom, changed his clothes, came out, sat in the kitchen, and watched the woman. "Betty, are you sure you want to do all this?" he asked her again. "I just want to help you." She didn't want to explain anything to him. He didn't answer anything to that line of hers. They ate dinner. Betty took out a bottle of wine from the refrigerator. She had prepared it long ago. She took out glasses and poured the amber liquid. "Well, here's to the meeting, and to you being well," she said. "Thank you." They clinked glasses and drank. Betty put her hand on the table, placed her palm on it, sat and looked at John. "Will you come to my museum tomorrow?" she asked. "I promised the principal I'd invite you." "Of course I will," he smiled. She could see that he was actually cute. Betty realized that everything was in her hands. After they had 2 glasses of wine each, she sat closer to John. "Let's kiss," she told him. "What?" He looked at her. "You think you didn't hear me," she said and lowered her eyes. He took her face in his palms and kissed her lips. "You're a good kisser," she told him. "You're not bad either." They went into the room. Betty's face was burning. It was the first time she had ever done such a thing. But she liked this man so much she couldn't resist him. In the room, they pulled apart the couch, lay there, and continued cuddling. "You'll probably think I'm being frivolous now," she said to him. "Why, not at all frivolous." He stroked her cheek. "John, honestly, I like you very much, and even though you have nothing, I don't need anything," she told him. "Betty, you're so nice." He ran his fingers over her cheek once more. "But I'm telling you, you don't need to get involved with me. I guess it's up to me to decide if I should mess with you or not," she told him and smiled. "You've done a lot of good for me already." He stopped talking. "Do you want me to go home?" she told him. "No, if you want, you can stay here." He lay on his back and stared at the ceiling. "John, let's try to be together, even though it's wrong for a woman to suggest it. But I really want to be close to you." She put her arms around him and lay on his shoulder. "Oh, Betty, you're going to have a hard time with me," he sighed. "But accept that it's my problem." She turned off the light and smiled in the darkness. Tonight was the first time that Betty slept with a man by her side. In the morning, John woke up first. He went to the kitchen and put the kettle on to make himself and Betty coffee. He didn't understand what feelings he had for the woman, but he realized she was doing a good thing for him. "Are you awake yet?" She smelled the coffee and opened her eyes. "I thought you had to go to work, and so you wouldn't worry. I made coffee for myself and you." He handed her a mug. "Thank you," she smiled. She was so pleased that the man had done something for her. She took a sip. The coffee was delicious. "So are you coming with me today, or will you come later?" she asked him. "I have the address. I'll come later," he said. "I will wait for you." She got dressed and went to the bathroom, washed her face, and went to work. "So, how is your acquaintance?" Angelica asked her. "Good. He should come today," Betty answered her. "So, we'll soon be at the wedding?" The principal smiled at her. "Wait, don't rush things." Betty was embarrassed. "What is there to hurry? If he came to you, I think you will live together and everything will be fine," she said at that moment. Betty's phone rang. She looked at it. The screen showed her mom's number. "Hello," she answered and pressed her finger to her lips to keep Angelica quiet. "Did you sleep over at his place tonight?" Her mom immediately attacked her. "Why couldn't I sleep over at his place? I'm a big girl," she told her. "You could have at least warned her," the woman told her. "Mom, I'm warning you. I'm old enough to start my own life," Betty told her and hung up. Mom called a few more times after that, but Betty dropped the call. After lunch, John came over. When Betty saw that he came in the same clothes he had come in, she felt a little embarrassed in front of her co-workers. But she quickly took off his jacket, hung it up in the coat closet, and led him through the halls. The woman has never told the history of the city where she lived and was born. She was pleased that John walks and listens to her, as she once did him in New York. That's it. That's our whole museum, she told him when they finished the tour. Well, I'm going home. I'll wait for you there. He kissed her on the cheek. John, she blushed and looked around. She saw the staff standing and looking at them. What's the big deal? You can't do that here, he asked her. No, why not? You can. It's just that she was still red. After that, she saw the man off and decided that tonight she needed to go home to pack. So she did. After work, she hailed a cab and drove home to where her parents lived. BT, is that you? Her mother heard the front door slam. Yes, Mom. I came to get my things, she told her, and walked to her room. Packed up all my essentials and got ready to go out. And when are you going to bring him to us, to introduce him to us? I promise you that we will come, but I don't know when. Betty realized that if her mother saw John, she would immediately realize that he was not like all the other men. Okay, I'll wait, but know that I'm in shock, she told her. BT paid no attention to this. She walked out of the entrance, got into a cab, and drove to where her favorite man was waiting. She walked into the apartment, which smelled deliciously of fried potatoes. Oh God, it smells so good, Betty muttered. It's just potatoes. He walked out into the hallway. Betty noticed he had shaved. It was nice. And it smells like the chef cooked it. She went straight to the kitchen. You're flattering me. He'd already cooked everything. So all I had to do was wash my hands and sit down at the table. Enjoy your meal. He leaned over and kissed her. Betty felt herself blushing as they began their meal. Wine? He asked her. They hadn't finished last night. Do you want some? She suddenly thought she had done everything for him up to this point, but today she had just come home from work and sat down to dinner. No, sit down. He too was alarmed that he had asked the woman the wrong thing. John, we're acting like two fools, she laughed, followed by him. I agree. He took her hand. From that moment, two adults who liked each other began to live together and help each other. John, listen, you have a diploma. I saw how you work with programs on my computer. Do not want to try to work in this direction. She asked him on his day off. What do you mean? He didn't understand. Well, if you want, you can get an official job. You can even work in our museum, or you can just work at home, taking broken computers and other equipment, she explained to him. Listen, I didn't think about it before, but now I realize that it's a really lucrative business. John shook his head. Betty got a call from her mom. Daughter, I'm on my way to you. She answered her mother's call. Good, and Betty gave her the address. Hello, she entered the apartment. Hi, the daughter came out into the hallway. Well, meet your future son-in-law. While she was talking, John came out of the room. Who's that? There was a woman standing there looking at him. It's John, Betty said. She knew the woman would have that reaction. It's a beggar. The mother looked at her daughter, unable to understand how someone like her could choose someone like him. Don't you dare say that about him. Betty snapped at her. Let him speak, for it is true, John said calmly. Have you gone mad? Glared the woman at her. Perhaps, but how can you all say such things if you don't know the person at all? Betty didn't understand. After her mother's words, she didn't even want to let her on the doorstep. Go home. I don't want to talk to you, Betty told her. So, you're ready to fight with the most dear to you person because of some homeless person, stood in the corridor and did not understand anything, woman. It's my choice. I made it. And if you don't like it, you can go home, her daughter told her. The mother left the apartment. Tears covered her eyes. She did not understand how a person for whom she had done everything in her life could act like this. Betty, why are you doing this? John said to her at home. Do you agree to be with me? She asked him. Of course he did. He could see that this woman would do anything for him, but he didn't understand why it was happening. This apartment is paid for 2 weeks. Now I will call and rent another one, where we will move and live there, she told him. After that, there were many other nuances. John didn't have any documents except his passport. Betty helped him to restore everything. She went to all the authorities herself because she knew people, made his papers, and they filed the first advertisement for his computer repair business. Doesn't that humiliate you? She asked him. Why should it humiliate me? He didn't get it. I make money and it doesn't smell. BT paid for everything, for the rented apartment, for clothes, for food, for everything, completely provided for the man who came to her. Every day their relationship only improved. She already realized to herself that she loved this man and saw that he loved her. Now she went to work looking beautiful and happy. John also began to slowly work out. In the city, he began to be recognized. Word of mouth was working well. 6 months into their life together, he was getting a lot of clients. And if before he could fix a computer, tablet, laptop, phone, or other equipment in one day, now it took weeks. See how well you're doing. Betty kissed him after work. It's all thanks to you, he hugged her. If you couldn't do it, I wouldn't have done anything, she told him. Well, yes, indeed it is, but if it weren't for you, none of this would have happened at all, and I might not exist anymore, he told her. John and Betty lived well. The woman's salary allowed her to travel, buy various things and appliances. It couldn't help but make her happy. Betty was now waiting for John to propose, but he kept delaying it, as if he was afraid of something. John, I love you so much. They've been together for a year. Do you want to go to your hometown, visit Selena, take a walk? Tell me more. She told him all this the other night. I wouldn't say no, he looked at her. He already had some pocket money, but not enough to travel or buy anything big. Selena, hi, she called her friend. Oh, what people, you remembered me. Selena was happy. We're coming to visit you, Betty told her. Who's we? She didn't understand. I mean who? It's me and John, she said. Hey, are you two still together? Wondered Selena's friend. I didn't just do all that for nothing, laughed Betty. Well, wild friend, you found a man for yourself. You made him for yourself. I praise you. Good for you. My friend was happy for her. So we're going to your place. Will you accept us? Betty waited for an answer. Yes, of course. What questions? Even if you had not called me and you would have just come, I would have accepted you. Selena was glad that soon her friends would come to her. Of course, she wasn't expecting John, but Betty was always welcome at her house. Angelica, can I have a vacation? Betty asked the principal. Why do you ask, of course? You've never been there. You've only been away for a few days and that's it. She looked at her and smiled. I knew you would understand. She hugged the principal. Now all that's left is to pack up and go to the airport. You're so brave. John looked at her as they drove to the airport. What's brave about it? Buy the tickets and go. She didn't understand him. Good. I'm glad to be in my homeland. He held her hand. When they arrived in New York and were already at Selena's, it was late. They sat at the table, talked, drank, then went to bed. And in the morning, John said that he would not disturb them and let them talk, and he would go on business. What business could you possibly have? His favorite woman asked him. Betty, I'll tell you everything later. As if John was keeping something from her, he got dressed and left. She watched him for a moment, then turned to Selena. Do you believe him? She asked. Oh, girlfriend, don't start. My mom doesn't understand me. No one at work understands me. Everyone tells me I did it for nothing, and you have no idea how good it feels to be with this man. Her friend looked at her. I'm not telling you anything. Just think about it. You're an adult. Now you need to look for a man for life, not for pleasure. Selena did not want to lecture, but as it turned out, that's exactly what she did. You all have no idea how good he makes me feel, Betty muttered and exhaled. They hadn't waited for John today, and the woman was very worried about it. Don't cry, Selena told her and sat down next to her. How can I not cry? She sobbed. Be strong. He came to the homeland. Maybe he met someone, went on a bender or stayed out too long, said her friend. But in the night, John came back. Where have you been? Betty asked him. Not there anymore. He smelled of alcohol. Okay, so what? You're gonna do this all the time? She stopped believing him. No. He looked her in the eye. You don't trust me. Why did you bring me to this town? Why, when I go somewhere in my city or do something, you always know about everything, and now you didn't tell me anything, she said to him. I thought we trusted each other. John didn't want to argue in front of Selena. Okay, everyone, let's go to sleep. I hope you don't go anywhere from us tomorrow. They went to bed. Selena, of course, heard everything, but she didn't interfere with their conversation because it was just their business. In the morning they woke up. Everyone pretended that nothing had happened, but Betty was resentful of John. She didn't understand how a man could do that to her. In 2 days, they had to fly back. The tickets were already bought, so they decided to spend the time to the best advantage. John spent the entire 2 days with Betty and Selena, never leaving their side. "I love you," he whispered to her. "And I love you," she looked at him. It seemed between people very strong relationship, and they love each other. "So, are you coming to see me again?" Selena looked at them as she saw them off in the cab that was taking them to the airport. "Of course you will. This is John's hometown. We met here more than once. You'll get tired of us yet," Betty told her. After that, they got into a cab and drove away. "Why don't you say anything?" John asked her. "Because I'm a little offended with you. I still don't know where you were that night." She looked out the window at the lights they were passing. "Betty, I was minding my own business. Believe me, please." He squeezed her hand. "I believe you, but I still can't forgive you." She fell silent. "So you can't forgive her?" He could see that the woman he loved really resented him. "Well, why not?" She squeezed his hand too. They arrived at the airport, went through security, and when they were already sitting in the airplane, John put a mask over his eyes and leaned back in his seat. "Won't you talk to me?" she asked. "About what?" Without opening his eyes, he asked. "About your business," she told him. Not really wanting to, she realized that in the next 2 hours, she wouldn't get anything out of him. When they arrived in their city and got off the plane, got into a cab, drove home, they both washed their faces and went to bed without talking. In the morning, Betty got up early and went to work. John stayed home. There was nothing to portend any quarrel or disagreement. Betty did her chores for some reason tonight. She decided to stop by to visit her mom. "Hi," she walked into the house and opened the door with her keys. "What, you finally decided to talk to me about your careless boyfriend?" Mom stood in the hallway and looked at her. "Why, troublemaker?" Betty didn't understand. "What kind?" The woman didn't understand. "Mom, enough please, it's my choice," the girl told her. She went to the kitchen, drank coffee. Her mother had made Betty's favorite pie. After that, she said she would go home. She got ready, hailed a cab, and drove off. When Betty entered the apartment, it was dark. "John, I'm home," she said from the hallway, but no one answered her. B went into the room, but no one was there, and neither were his clothes, computer, phone, or anything else. Betty immediately dialed his phone number, but it was unavailable. She was blocked on social media. The girl sat down on the couch and cried. "Selena, hi," dialed her friend's number. "Hi, what's wrong?" She answered her. "John left me," she said, and cried again. "How did he leave you yesterday? Everything was still fine." She didn't understand. "I don't know. I came home today and he was gone," she said. "You have done so much for him, restored all the documents, brought him into the people, got him a job, and he did not even talk to you." Perplexed friend. You see how sometimes it turns out. Betty could not talk about it calmly. She could not be in this apartment. "And what are you going to do now?" asked the most painful question Selena. "I don't know. I guess I'll pack my things and go back to my mom." Betty hadn't thought about it yet. "Be strong. It's okay. Think about the fact that nothing will work out for him. He has no one but you." Selena was sure of it. "How could I ever love a man like that?" Betty said. "And everyone warned you about it and you still stood your ground." Selena didn't even know what to advise her. "Okay, friend. Thanks for the support. I didn't know who to call." Betty looked at the screen once more and disconnected her phone. She had tried calling John several times that night, but all attempts had failed. "What did I ever do to him?" she said into the darkness. The next day she came to work. Her mood was at zero. "Baleshka, what's wrong?" Angelica came up to her. "Nothing. Everything is fine, except that John left me," she said. "How John left?" The woman didn't understand her. "Just like that, he packed his things and left." She looked at one point. "What things did he pack?" "The things you bought for him." The woman was puzzled. "Come on, I don't feel sorry for them. It's just that he was a scoundrel. He could have looked me in the eye and told me what he thought, and why he had to leave New York. I don't understand." Betty was sure he'd gone back there. She was on automatic because she didn't want to do anything, and she couldn't. She had to go home in the evening, but she didn't want to go there, so she went to her mom's house. "Why are you here?" the woman asked her. "Why can't I come home already?" Betty asked her. "No, why you can't. It's just that you haven't done that in a long time." Mom realized that her daughter had something wrong. "Just do not pester with questions. When I calm down, I'll tell you everything myself," looked at her daughter. "All right," nodded the woman. Betty went to her room, but even here she felt bad. She continued to live and work. The days stretched very slowly. She wanted nothing. People came by. She smiled at them, said various things, pretended everything was fine. "Betty," one man read her name tag. "Yes, I'm listening." She looked up at him. "Can I take you for a walk tonight?" he asked. "Funny," she said sadly. "What's funny?" He didn't get it. "No, just yes, I am ready to give you a tour if you want it." She looked at him. "Well, yes, and a tour would not hurt, but I would like to walk with you personally." He told her the truth. "You know, I just broke up with a man and I'm not ready to enter into new ones yet." I wanted to cry. "Oh, I'm sorry if I hurt any of your feelings," the man said. "No, it's just a little unpleasant." She turned away and walked away from him. He wanted to catch up with her, but didn't. Betty sat in her office. If on any other day when she and John had been together, she would have done 1,000 things. Now she just sat there staring at one point. "Betty, I don't need an employee like that." Angelica walked in. "Why?" She turned to her and looked at her with eyes that do not see. She thought about her own. "Look at you. It's like someone died." The principal sat down on a chair near the table. "You, spit over her shoulder. "Come on." Angelica patted her on the shoulder. "Do you need a couple of days off?" "No, it's even harder for me out there," Betty admitted. "That's it. Nose to the wind, get up and get to work," she told her. "Thank you all for being so supportive." Betty stood up and hugged her boss. After that, she got up and went to the hall to distract herself with people there. And in the evening, she took to touring the city so that she wouldn't have to sit around thinking she was doing badly. "Mom, I'm home." She came home and fell off her feet. In the last 2 weeks, she took on so much work that she only got to the pillow and immediately fell asleep. "Look what you've done to yourself," her mother told her. It was true that Betty had lost weight, and she could see that she didn't look very good, but she couldn't help it. She didn't want to drink or eat. It had only been 3 weeks since the breakup, but it felt like 6 months. "Well, you still have not calmed down?" asked her acquaintances. Can you imagine? She looked at them. On the one hand, she was ashamed to admit to someone that she had picked up a tramp on the street, would do anything for him, and he did that to her. Her heart was torn to pieces. "Why don't we go to a bar and have a good time?" they suggested to Betty. "Let's go," she agreed with them. There was one man in the company who Betty knew had had his eye on her for a long time. She had never thought of it because he was younger than she was, but tonight she gave him a chance. "Harry, how are you doing?" She sat up to him. He was fine. She could tell he was glad to have Betty around. "I'm not doing so well." She raised her glass and looked at the young man. "As much as I don't want you to have a bad time with him, but I wish you happiness." He raised his. "I'm sorry." She took a sip. "For what?" Harry set his glass down on the table and turned to the one he liked. "I know you like me, and I'm sitting here dripping with talk about John." Her eyes became very sad. "What are you talking about?" He put his arm around her. They sat here for a long time until closing time. Tomorrow was a day off. They didn't need to go anywhere. It just made it worse. On days like this, Betty didn't know what to do with herself. She cleaned, took care of herself. If there was an opportunity to go to work, she was there, even if it was for free. And tomorrow was that day again. "I'll walk her out." Harry looked at her. They were both tipsy, and Betty nodded. "Good." She turned the other way. "Your house is over there." He pointed in the opposite direction. "And over there today," she pointed forward. "Okay." The young man shrugged, and they walked on. When they were at the entrance, Harry wondered very much that if she had her own apartment, why she didn't live in it. After that, they went inside. The girl had some wine there. She took it out of the refrigerator. They sat at the table in the kitchen for a while longer, and after that they went to bed. In the morning, Betty woke up with the sun shining in her eyes. It was understandable. No one had closed the curtains since the evening. The girl lay on the bed. Her head hurt. She remembered what happened yesterday. Suddenly, Betty, as scalded, sat up in bed and looked to see who else was in the apartment. There was. Harry was asleep on the couch. "Oops," she grabbed her head. "What? You have a headache?" the young man retorted. "No. Why did you stay here last night?" she asked him. It's just that we were in such a state that I couldn't go home, he admitted. Okay, I'm sorry, she said the words several times. What are you always apologizing for? Harry didn't understand and looked at Betty. I already answered that question for you yesterday. She went to the bathroom. After they washed their faces and drank coffee, Betty got ready to go to her mom's house. Of course, this was just an excuse to get rid of Harry. She looked at the phone screen. No one was calling. It was sad. Betty, what's up? Why are you looking like that? Her mom greeted her on the doorstep. I don't want to tell you anything. She walked to her room. And I want to know, followed her mom. You see, I'm suffering, and I've offended a good man, said the woman's daughter. What good man? She didn't understand. Harry, Betty confessed, though it wasn't easy. How did you hurt him? The woman didn't understand. Last night, to support me, acquaintances called me to the bar. He sat down, we talked, began to tell the girl. What's the big deal? Mom didn't understand. Nothing, he likes me. Betty looked at her mother. That's good. For lack of anyone else, you can date him from now. Clapped her hands. What are you saying? Her daughter couldn't understand. Why, he's handsome, young. She didn't stop. Oh, if I had known, I would not have told you anything at all. Betty now wanted to close herself off and not talk to anyone else. She sat the rest of the day behind closed doors, never going out or talking to anyone. No matter how much her mother begged her to come out and have tea with her, Betty didn't do it. Where are you going? She heard the front door slam. Home, Betty said the word, not expecting herself to say it. She thought she was going to give up renting this apartment, and then it just came out. Are you sure? The mother was standing in the doorway. Yes, her daughter didn't even look at her. She went down to the street and walked towards the apartment. By now, she thought she wouldn't give it up. She came to this apartment where everything was familiar. Even though it had been quite some time, she could still smell John, the perfume she'd bought him. And there, in the bathroom, lay his hairbrush. Betty walked to the kitchen, put the kettle on, remembered that she used to make him tea and milk in the evening when she came home from work, and breakfast in the morning. Tears came to her eyes. Betty sat down in the kitchen at the table, made herself some tea. She sat and stared at one point, wondering what she should do next, how to live without him. And most importantly, how for so many years, she had never been so attached to anyone. And this man had done the impossible. And who else? It would be some oligarch with houses, factories, steamships. But it was an ordinary vagrant whom she met on the street, you could say, on the garbage dump. She didn't notice that she was crying. And at that moment, her phone beeped with the message that the subscriber was within range of the network. Betty's eyes widened, and she grabbed the phone. And just as she was about to dial the number, John's name popped up on the screen. Hello, she said. Valeshka, hi, he answered her. John, where were you? Why weren't you available? She was getting hysterical. Her heart was beating in her throat. She couldn't speak calmly. Can you go outside? He asked her. What? She didn't understand. Go outside. Are you in the apartment? He asked question after question. Right now? She was talking like she was crazy. Yes, right now, get up, open the door, and go outside. I'm waiting for you at the entrance, he said. Why can't you come in? She didn't understand. Please, I beg you. Go outside, here and we'll talk. He disconnected. Betty couldn't remember herself from joy. Her hands were shaking. Her heart kept beating like that. Somewhere in her throat, her temples were throbbing. She put on her boots, threw on her cloak, and ran to the door. She opened the door of the entrance, and at once she did not recognize him. Near the benches on the asphalt stood an expensive car, and near it a handsome, well-dressed man. Why are you looking at me like that? He smiled at her. John, is that you? She came up to him. Betty, have you gone mad while I was away? He laughed. Going crazy with you here. At that moment, tears came out of her eyes. Well, come here, he hugged her. What's going on? She looked up at him. Everything is falling into place, he mouthed to her. Why are we talking here? Where did this car come from? Whose car is it? The woman had a million questions. I just wanted to show you around and tell you everything. He headed for the driveway. To be honest, I don't understand anything. Did your companion return everything to you? She guessed. Yes and no, he didn't let her out of his arms. Please, I've almost lost my mind this month. Tell me now what happened, she asked him tearfully. They entered the house. John went into the kitchen, put some wine, cheese, some other small things on the table. They sat down next to each other. So, she looked at him, waiting for him to tell her everything. "First of all, I'm sorry I did this to you." He kissed her hand. "How?" She looked at him with big eyes. It was John, the John she knew, but at the same time, it wasn't him at all. "I started a business once, but no one believed in me. No one supported me. But I didn't stop. I did it all myself. After that, money appeared. I met a woman I loved very much. But money spoils a man, so I could not resist. I hurt her, did not come home, cheated. She then said that she would rather live with a homeless beggar than with someone like me, and left me. For a while I poured wine on my grief, and then I realized who I had lost, decided to become that homeless beggar." He lowered his head. It was not very easy to confess to lying. "So what? Where does this girl woman?" Betty didn't understand. "It turned out to be you." He gave her a beaming smile. "I don't understand anything." She frowned her forehead again. "That girl lived in the same house as your Celine, so I changed my clothes, left everything to my deputy, and started hanging around. But when she met me, she didn't even recognize me. I started hitting on her, but I didn't reveal who I really was. You should have seen when I asked her for food for the first time, how she grimaced." He looked out the window, apparently remembering it all. "What's this got to do with me?" Betty still didn't understand. "No, you weren't in the plans at all," he smiled. "How?" She stopped talking. "And simply, that day I so entered into a role thought, and whether at all any girl can go with a tramp. So I pestered you with this tea, and you took me straight to the cafe. Well, I thought you were kind-hearted, and afterwards you weren't even ashamed to come out of that courtyard and walk with me. And I saw that you were not listening out of respect, but you were really interested." He hugged Betty, and she pressed herself against him. "I see, the actor of a burned-out theater," she said. "I'm sorry again." He pulled her tighter against him. "Why did you leave?" "I wanted to show you how bad you'd be without me, didn't I?" She pulled away from him and looked into his eyes. "When we were in New York, I got in touch with my deputy. It had been a while. I couldn't be away from the helm for that long. I needed to fix things up a bit," he said in a businesslike tone. "Could you tell me that?" She got up and started to make tea for him and herself again. It would have been a long explanation. He lowered his eyes. "Oh, and leaving like that, not saying anything was easier. Why did you even come back then? I've suffered enough." She turned away from him. "Betty, I love you. At first, it was like a game, but now when I left, I realized that everything is for real." He stood up and hugged her from behind. "And I love you." She pressed herself against him again, this time with her back to him. They stood like that for a long time, and then the kettle whistled. "Are you going to meet my mom?" She looked at him. "She's not mad at me because of you." John looked at Betty. "What, are you scared?" She laughed. "No, I'm not scared. Let's go," he said. "Shall I call? Maybe give you a heads up?" "Suit yourself," he shrugged. "Can I call Selena? Tell her you're back." She took the phone from the table. "Sure, what are you asking me?" He smiled. "Go ahead and call, while I finish my tea." Then now she went to her room and dialed Selena's number. "Well, that's quite a story," her friend said to her when she had heard everything Betty had told her. "You don't say. I'm shocked. My hands are still shaking." Betty sat looking out the window, smiling. "So maybe you'll move to New York now?" she asked her. "I don't know. We haven't talked about it yet. Now we'll just go to my mom." When the friends talked, the girl went back to the kitchen. She looked at her favorite and could not believe that even this morning, she suffered that he was not around. "Are you ready?" He picked up everything from the table he brought with him. "Yes, let's go." Betty was a little worried. They pulled up to her house, went up to the floor. She knocked. The mother, when she opened the door, saw her daughter and a handsome, well-dressed man beside her. "Hello," she said, and looked at Betty with big eyes. "Mommy, meet John. This is John," she told her cheerfully. "Come in, John." The woman frantically remembered what her daughter had told her about him. They went into the kitchen and the father came in. John unsealed the wine, poured it into glasses, and raised the first toast to the acquaintance. "Well, I've finally seen you," said Betty's mom. "What did you say about me before?" He smiled. She waved her hands and laughed. John realized that except for Betty, everyone else didn't treat him all that well. After they sat at his mom's house, they drove back home. Betty, I need to have a serious talk with you. John looked at her. Good. They had gotten more wine and were now sitting at the table. How would you feel about me asking you to come and live in Street Petersburg? He poured the liquid into glasses. I'd go to the end of the world with you. She smiled, thinking that she'd just talked to Selena about it this morning. It settled then, he raised his glass. But you do realize that I'll need to work things out here. She looked into his favorite eyes. Of course, there are no questions, he smiled. The next day, John and Betty drove together to her place of work. BT looked at the man who was beside her, Angelica. Do you recognize John? The one asked. She smiled. Wow, the principal shook her head. Can you imagine, and it happens, laughed the employee. While John was walking around the halls, Betty went to the principal's office and told her everything. Yes, I would hate to lose such an employee, but I wish you happiness, she told her. And what you can do without working off, her interlocutor looked at her. Of course, Angelica touched her hand there. You'll settle in. If you need references, I'll be sure to write. Thank you. Betty didn't think she'd have anything like this in her life. Happiness to you, she thanked her again. She and John went home together. In the evening, they called all their friends and invited them to get together at the end of the week to celebrate their departure. Would you invite me to the wedding? They asked, all happy for Betty and John, and only Harry sat in a corner sad. Of course, whoever can come will, of course, Betty promised them. She still couldn't believe that everything that was happening was true. When the couple said goodbye to everyone, they got into the car and went to the place where a long and happy future awaited them. Did you regret it? John turned to her. Regret what? Betty didn't understand. For getting involved with me? He explained. How can you regret something like that? In a short time, I experienced the whole range of emotions a woman can have, she told him. They were not one day on the road, driving, remembering different things, stopping, taking pictures. The lovers had a good time together. And if I had remained a tramp? John looked at the road. They drove on. So what? I fell in love with a man, your character, not your wallet or something. She looked at him. At that moment, Betty got a laugh. What's funny? He was surprised. Remember now about the passport. Did you do everything with it on purpose too? She looked at the road too. Oh yes, I still owe you money, he remembered. What are you talking about? We are a family. What do you owe? She folded her arms on her chest. You did everything for me, and now? He stopped talking. What now? She wondered. Nothing. I'll do anything to make you happy. John put his hand on her knee. When they were in town, John suggested they go to Selena's place first. Why her? Betty didn't understand. Well, because I don't think the house is ready yet, he told his beloved and took her hand. Okay, I don't mind, she said and looked out the window. After that, she pulled out her cell phone and dialed her friend's number. Hi, said Betty to her. Hi, Selena was happy to get her call. And we're coming to see you now, said the girl cheerfully. Are you in town yet? The girlfriend inquired. Yes, we just got here. John said his house isn't ready yet. So we'll come to your place for a while if you don't mind, gibbered Betty. Of course, come over. Selena was always happy to have friends over. They arrived at the courtyard they both already knew, glancing over when they saw the very table they had once sat at together. I hope you're not leaving now. She blushed. She remembered the last time they'd been here. John had done just that. What are you talking about? He took her hand and pulled her to him. Together they walked to Selena's door, knocking. Her reaction was the same as everyone else's, including Betty. Well, wow, John, she looked at him. Okay, enough talk. Let's talk about something else already. They went into the kitchen and sat down at the table. What are we going to talk about? The girl couldn't understand. Betty, John looked into her eyes. Yes, everything trembled inside. Will you marry me? He pulled out the ring he'd bought when he'd gone to see her in town. Why didn't you do it in front of my parents? She was surprised. I did not know. I was afraid that you would not refuse. He lowered his eyes, and sat with the outstretched ring. I love you so much. She hugged him and accepted the ring. Well, that was it. How nice that everything ends well. Selena was happy for her friend. She clapped her hands together. All together in the evening, they went to a restaurant to celebrate the proposal. The next morning, John went to show her the house he was preparing for her and Betty. Wow, What a place, Selena said as she stood and looked around. By the way, if you're renting, you can move in with us. No one will mind. John looked at Beatty and said to Selena, yes, indeed, agreed. She agreed with her future husband. The wedding was decided to be played in a month. Everyone they knew was invited, both Beatty and John. He would not refuse his bride anything, and she did not want much. She had enough money herself to buy the dress and everything else. And so the day came when they said yes to each other at the registry office. It was the happiest day of Betty's life. She was the luckiest woman in the world. You should have been so lucky to move to New York, she told Selena. Yeah, and lure you to visit, she laughed. All the guests congratulated the newlyweds. They were happy for them. It was necessary to endure so much in life to meet the real happiness. Betty looked at her beloved. And I love you, he kissed her. After that they went home, and in the morning they had a plane to warm countries to be alone there. Selena moved into a friend's house. They didn't interfere with each other in any way. On the contrary, now the baby she had left all these years with her mom could move in with her. One morning Selena came into the kitchen. Betty was sitting on a chair with a glass of water. Why are you so pale? Her friend was concerned. I don't know. I've been sick since morning. Nothing helps. She looked at the water, which was already making her sick. Betty, wait, laughed Selena and went off to her room. She returned a few minutes later, something white in her hand. More pills, she moaned. Not guessed. Selena handed her the box. What's this? She looked at her. What are you? Like a little girl, you must realize what can happen when a big uncle and aunt sleep together, smiled her friend. What? I did not even think about it. How old I am. She raised her eyes at Selena, in which there was horror. Come on, go to the bathroom, she urged her on. Betty got up, did everything quickly, came out, nothing changed in her face. She looked at the plastic stick with horror. Well, waited for Celine's answer. A+, said Betty. In general, everything is perfect, was a happy friend. The friends were sitting in the kitchen. They were trying to cook something, but one was always sick. She couldn't even look at the food, but the other was on a roll. Finally, John came home from work. Hi, and your wife has great news for you, Selena greeted him. What's wrong? He walked in and saw the state of his beloved. Here, she handed him a test. Are we having a little one? He guessed. Yes, she nodded and ran to the bathroom again. That's great news, he looked at his friend. Have you seen how hard it is to have kids? She laughed. Yes, now Valeshka needs triple attention, John said, and went to the other room to call his mother-in-law and tell her that she would soon become a grandmother. Can I come visit you? She asked her son-in-law then. What a conversation. He was only too happy to have guests. At first, Betty was bad all the time. The doctors advised her different things. She did everything they said. After that, it got easier. I guess it's because of my age, she said to her husband before going to bed. What are you talking about? People give birth at other ages, he was indignant. But not the first one, she objected. Okay, if at first it's hard, then later it will be better, he hugged his wife. Thank you, she hugged him too. For what? He wondered. For everything, she shut up. Thank you, we will tell our grandchildren that our grandmother picked up a homeless man in the dumpster, washed him, fed him, made him a man, he laughed. I wish I had grandchildren, Betty moaned. As John had said, the last trimester had been easier. The heartburn and nausea were gone, and now they just have to wait for X day. And it came. The doctors had hedged their bets and scheduled a C-section to make sure there were no complications. That's it. Good luck, John, Selena, and Betty's mom clenched fists. Thank you. She was happy to have such friends and family. She was taken to the operating room. Everything was going well there. Not 25 minutes later, there was a loud cry from the baby. Who's there? Betty was waiting. Congratulations, you have a boy, showed her. Albert, said the one who'd just become a mom. Can you tell the father yourself, or can we? They're waiting outside the door, asked the woman doctor. You can do it yourself, said Betty exhaustedly. Okay, she nodded. And then she was moved to the ward. After a couple of hours, they told her to get up. Then they brought her to feed the baby. BT, congratulations, the family gathered outside the window. Yeah, she could see how much fun they were having, but she couldn't be bothered. Her lower abdomen was aching, and she had to get up. change, and feed the baby. And with this, the woman coped, and on the 5th day they were discharged. My darlings, John ran up to them. Hi, Betty handed him a blue ribbon package. I promise you that you will never, ever need anything. He kissed her. Thank you, we're fine. The woman got into the car. From that day on, the mother, grandmother, and Selena all took care of the baby. At first, they even fought over who would babysit or walk him. But as Albert grew older, almost all the responsibilities fell on Betty's shoulders. Mom still helped a little, but then Dad got sick. Let him come here too, John suggested. No, we'll do it at home where the walls help, she said. Then the son-in-law accompanied his mother-in-law to the airport. If you want a second one, you should think about it now, Selena said and laughed. No, that's enough. Betty smiled with her. Why? Her friend didn't understand. Why didn't you give birth to the second? She was surprised. I didn't meet such a wonderful man as your John. Selena looked at him. He was sitting at a table in your courtyard. Betty turned to her. What are you talking about? John came into the kitchen at that moment. About you, laughed his wife and walked over to him. Did not understand. He stood and looked at his girlfriends. Selena says that it is necessary to give birth to the second. She looked into her husband's eyes. What about you? He didn't say for or against. I say enough is enough. She shook her head. If God willing, we will definitely give birth. He turned and winked at Selena. I heard that, nodded her friend's head. Yeah, so you'll go and give birth yourself. She just snorted. Girls, how lucky I am to have you, the man hugged them. What about the boys? Betty looked at her husband and then looked at her son. If there was no luck with girls, there would be no boys. He took his son in his arms. My darlings, and if Selena hadn't swung into action and gone to New York, none of this would have happened at all, hugged her husband and son Betty. That means we have Selena to thank for making all this happen, John laughed. They ate lunch together and then got dressed and went for a walk. Now I understand what a family is, John said, watching how much everyone loved each other, as he had thought it was only in the movies. They walked until evening and then returned home, each doing his own thing, but all happy. Before going to bed, Betty called her mom, asking how her father was doing. She said he was out of the hospital and the crisis was over. Betty hugged her husband. She looked. Her son was sleeping in the crib. The woman exhaled, smiled, and closed her eyes. Who would have thought her trip to New York would turn out to be such happy moments? The major ridiculed the girl, and after a while, life turned so that he sobbed on his knees at her feet. Ever since she was a little girl, Lucy didn't know what rejection was. She always had everything, whatever she did not ask her parents from the first time received. The girl's father was an entrepreneur, well known in the city. He did everything well, so the money was flowing. Lucy was the only child in the family. Daughter, are you ready? Her mother asked her. They were going to kindergarten. Yes, screamed the girl. She had a lot of friends. All of them she could at any time invite them to visit. No one was against it. Today we'll go to kindergarten and tomorrow we'll go to the movies, her mother told her on the way. They did that every weekend. The family lived outside the city. When the father had time, he took them by car, but more often mother and daughter walked. The woman didn't work anywhere. She was a housewife, so she had a lot of free time and could do things with her daughter. Mommy, will we go to the store in the evening? The girl asked her. Sure, smiled back at her mom. In kindergarten, the girl liked it. She never hooliganized, obeyed the teachers. It was her last year in kindergarten. Well, how did my daughter behave today? Her mom came to pick her up in the evening. Oh, wonderful, the teacher told her. Everyone would be like that. You're my clever girl. Her mother stroked her head. After that, they packed their things and, as the woman had promised in the morning, went shopping. Buy me this toy. Lucy asked her mother for a big elephant. Where are you going to get so many of them? Mom didn't refuse, but she would have bought something else with pleasure. Mommy, her daughter looked at her with such eyes that it was impossible to refuse. Okay, give us this elephant, said the woman to the seller. After that, the happy daughter walked with the huge elephant through the streets. She saw other children looking at her, so she was very grateful to her mommy. At home, they did various activities. Her mommy taught her to embroider, to draw, because she herself had a craving for it. Earlier, one of the walls was filled with paintings, which were made by women's hands. Now there were others that had been embroidered or painted by the girl. "Lucy, read me this fairy tale," her mother used to tell her before she went to bed. It's not right. It's the mother who should read fairy tales to the child, not the child to the mother, she laughed loudly. Thus, Mom wanted to accustom her daughter to reading and interest in books. It was possible not to go to kindergarten in the summer, but Lucy herself insisted on it. Mom did not oppose it. "Well, Hal, there are friends there," said the girl. Yes, I do not argue with you." Mom was not at all against it, because during the day, while no one was at home, she was doing her own thing. Summer flew by quickly, and here, Arinka went to the first grade. From the very first day, the teacher liked her for her diligence, clean uniform, beautiful bows. All pens and notebooks were folded neatly. "Arishka, sit at the first desk," she said to her when they came to the classroom after the line. "Thank you." She sat down and folded her hands on the desk. From that day on, school began. Just like in kindergarten, the girl tried to do everything the teacher assigned. She glued, molded, drew, wrote, read, and at the same time, practically did everything alone. "Maybe you need some help." Her mom came up to her in the evening. "No, I've already done everything here. Look." She handed her notebooks to her. "Oh, what a clever girl you are." The woman admired her. The father was not at home more and more. He was busy with work, but no one blamed him for that, because he did everything for his girls. So passed year after year, and here, already the girl began to study in the middle school. "Lucy, what do you want to be?" Her mother often asked her. "I don't know. If they paid good money for it, I would become an artist," she said. "Why not give it a try?" Lucy had already been going to art school for 3 years. "I don't even know, but it's too early to tell," she reasoned sensibly. In the evenings, she mostly painted pictures or still lifes. "Why don't you go out with your friends?" Mom wondered. "I do not know, as it does not want to. They have only nonsense in their heads," said her daughter. "And what?" I wondered. "Stupidity in their heads?" Was interested in Mom. "Different. I don't want to talk about it." Lucy went on with her work. When she was already in 9th grade, she decided for sure that she would choose the profession of an artist. Perhaps she would start teaching other kids to draw, and if she went, she would paint to sell, which is what she was aiming for. Wasting time on the 10th and 11th grade did not want to, so after the end of the 9th grade, Lucy entered the Kudrath in the school, which was located in their city. "Daughter, are you sure you decided to connect your life with this profession?" Mom and Dad were worried about her because they knew that the teacher, this is not a lucrative profession, and the artist is unlikely that in his lifetime will sell paintings. "With my years, I'll do it, and if it does not go, there is still time to retrain," she replied. Well, as you know, Mom knew that with her daughter to argue useless, if she decided something that decided, it will do it to the end. It was easy at school. Lucy knew and understood everything for a long time. She knew about paints, canvases, brushes. They often went on plein airs. On one of them, Lucy met Max. "Hi," he came up to her. "Hello." She broke away from her work. "I'm Max." He held out his hand to her. "Lucy," she smiled and shook it. "What year are you in?" He sat down next to her. "3rd," she smiled modestly. "I'm in 2nd. He moved his easel closer to hers and they began to paint together. "What do you do in the evening?" he asked unobtrusively. "I don't know. I work," she shrugged. "And what is your work?" the guy asked. "Many people order me portraits to give to their loved ones or parents, and I also design banners," she answered and laughed. She was interested. It was the first time a young man had approached her. If they approached her, they were interested in her personally, not in her work. "Maybe we can go somewhere," he suggested to her. "And where to?" She was curious. She liked the guy too. "I don't know. There's a cafe in town. Maybe there." He looked at her. Okay, for the first time in her life, Lucy was going on a date. "Then I'll wait for you there after 7 o'clock tonight," Max said and continued drawing. "Lucy, where are you going?" Her mother asked her in the evening when she saw that her daughter had changed more than one outfit. "Going on a date," she said, her cheeks flushed. "What date? You didn't tell me anything about it." Mom was very surprised. "Today I met a young man at the plein air. His name is Max. He invited me to a cafe, which recently opened in our city, she began to tell me, and she was trying on earrings. But wow, what news, the woman rejoiced. She went to her room and returned a few minutes later. Here, look, she opened her hand in which there was a pearl necklace and earrings. Mom, these are your favorites, her daughter looked at her. It's okay. I think it's just right for a first date, modest and tasteful. The woman knew a lot about jewelry. Lucy put on the black dress, the necklace and earrings her mother had given her, and let her hair down. It was dark in color. The voluminous hair fell to her shoulders. It was very beautiful. Well, how do you like me? Asked the daughter to her mother. Just beautiful, she said. Lucy, in a good mood, went to the cafe, where a young man was waiting for her. When she got there, the time was already 8:30. The girl entered the room and immediately saw him. Max, she went up to him. Lucy, I thought you weren't coming, he said to her, stood up, and pushed back a chair for her to sit down. I didn't calculate the time for the road. We live outside the city. I walked here, she began to tell him. The main thing is that you came. It's nothing. The waiter brought their order before the girl could look at the menu. Wow, that speed, she looked at him. You apologize for my impudence, but I've already made an order. There were 2 salads on the table, as well as 2 glasses of champagne. That's okay, it's my favorite salad, she smiled. She enjoyed spending time with this guy. First of all, he was cute, she liked him, and secondly, their tastes matched. You probably have a lot of suitors, he told her and was embarrassed. What are you saying? I went on a date with you for the first time, she also blushed. Wow, and where have you been hiding your beauty? And he covered her hand with his hand. Max, she pulled it out and lowered her eyes. What's the big deal? He didn't understand. I think it's too early on a first date to have tactile contact, was her opinion. Okay, whatever, no touching, the guy shrugged. They continued to sit, looking at each other, talking. After a well-spent evening, Max offered to walk the girl home. She did not refuse. Wow, how far you live. They kept walking and walking along the road. In general, we have a car, but my mom and I rarely use it. Most of my dad drives it. And when he's on his way with us, he can give us a ride, Lucy told him. All understood. The boy was silent. When they reached the girl's house, he whistled as he looked at the 2-story structure. Wow, what a big house you live in, he said in admiration. Come on, it's not my fault. It's my father's, she told him. But it's your father, the guy said. It was obvious he was trying to pretend he wasn't jealous. That's it, bye. She grabbed the doorknob. Will we meet tomorrow? He asked her, and he stood there thinking that she wouldn't be friends with a beggar. At school, of course we'll meet, she laughed. He didn't want to leave until he found out if she'd go out with him or not. Are you asking me out on another date? She questioned him. Why not? And then another, and another, and another. He was happy. Okay, I agree. Just let's make a deal. Go for a walk right after school so I don't have to go home and then walk back to the city, she suggested to him. I agree to everything, Max quickly agreed. The boy turned around, said goodbye, and went home. Lucy went into her place as well. How did it go? Her mother asked her from the doorstep. She looked at the woman with such eyes that she realized that her daughter had fallen in love. The next day, Lucy didn't go to school as usual. She usually wore jeans, a sweater, and sneakers. But today she was wearing a beautiful dress. Her hair was braided, and she still had the same pearl earrings in her ears. Lucy, she heard someone calling her, looked up and saw that it was Max. Hi, she waved at him. Wait, he caught up with her, and they walked into the building together. So how are you feeling? She asked the guy. Great, he told her. Then, before meeting up after couples, they parted near the auditorium where she was supposed to have class. Yeah. Come on, she was pleased that the guy was paying so much attention to her. All day she was in an uplifted mood, and after classes were over, she walked out of the college and immediately saw him. Max, she shouted. Yes, hi, I'm waiting. He looked at her with loving eyes. They met, held hands, and walked. Lucy liked walking with the young man, she smiled. So what shall we do? He turned to her. I don't know, suggest, she trusted him. Initially suggest we go for a walk in the park. He looked at the girl. I won't say no, she laughed. They headed towards the park. There were various rides. You could shoot at the shooting range, which was the first thing they did. Max took a long time aiming at the target and eventually won a big bear for Lucy. "Oh, thank you. No one has ever done anything like that for me," she hugged the toy. "Will be the third one with us." He was glad he had managed to do it. After that, they went to the Ferris wheel, sat in a booth. It was very scary and fun at the same time. After riding on the wheel, they went to an ice cream parlor, made an order, and sat talking for a long time. They enjoyed the treat. "Why did you choose me?" the girl asked him. "I don't know," he shrugged, and it was true. "I never dated anyone before. I didn't even have a friend. I was at home all the time, studying, being with my parents, and now," she looked up at him and smiled. "And now you will be together with me," he finished the phrase for her. "It turns out that way." She folded her hands in front of her. It was obvious that the girl was very worried. "What are you going to do on vacation?" Max asked her. "I haven't thought about it yet, but usually I go to the nature and transfer some beautiful views to paper." She began to tell him what she had done last summer. "Well, that's a great idea." He didn't mind drawing either. The more they talked to the guy, the more she blushed and was embarrassed by him. "What are you so shy about?" He tried the attempt to put his hand on hers again. "I don't know. I'm usually easy to get along with people, but with you, it's like this," she admitted honestly. "Usually it should be the other way around. The more people communicate, the more they get to know each other and the shyness goes away." He really liked this girl. "But I have it like this." She averted her eyes to the side. "Well, of course, it takes time to get to know each other," he told her. That day, they stayed in the park until the evening. And then, as yesterday, Max went to see Lucy home. "Would you come to visit?" she asked him today. "Isn't it early?" He was surprised. "I'll introduce you to your parents, and then it will be seen." She wanted to show the guy to her mom. "I don't mind," the guy answered her. They entered the gate. "Lucy, is that you?" they heard in the hallway. "Yes, Mom, I'm not alone," she warned her, so that the woman, God forbid, did not say anything unnecessary. "And with whom?" Mom came out of the kitchen. "Hello," looked at her young man. "You must be Max," she guessed. "Yes, my name is Max," he smiled his sweetest smile. "And I, Veronica." "Come in," she invited the children into the kitchen. They came in and sat down at the table. "Are you going to have dinner?" Veronica asked them. "Probably not, but we'll have tea." Lucy looked at Max. "Yes, I agree," he confirmed. They sat in the kitchen until their father came home. "Oh, I see we have company." He came into the kitchen. "Yes, Lucy brought a friend to introduce us." His wife approached him. "Great," said the man, and walked over to the young man. "Max," he held out his hand. "Tony," he said, and shook it. "It's a pleasure to meet you," the guy said to them. "And you and me." They all sat down at the table. The evening was going well. They talked, learning about each other, who, where from, why they came, who the parents were, and everything else. "Well, Max, we invite you to visit. You can come to us every night." Lucy and his parents saw him off. "Thank you," he told them. When he opened the door, Lucy decided to go out with him and walk him to the gate. "Your parents are good," the young man told her. "I know that myself," she laughed back. They walked up to the gate, stopping. "Max, you know, we've only been talking to you for a couple days, but it feels like a couple years," she giggled. "You wouldn't believe it. I have the same feeling," he told her. Max grabbed the handle of the gate and was about to open it when Lucy came over and kissed him gently on the cheek. He grabbed the spot and turned to her. His eyes widened. "I'm sorry," she was embarrassed. "No, you're not. Yesterday, when you wouldn't let me put my hand on yours, I thought it would be a long time before I got to do that." He wrapped his arms around her. They stood like that for a few minutes, and then Max kissed her cheek too, opened the gate, and went home. Lucy stood looking after him. She was pleased. She realized that she was beginning a serious relationship with the boy. "How did it go?" her mom asked her when she got back to the house. "It was fine," she told her mom and went to her room. Today, she wanted to draw something tender, something big. Max. She sketched some lines on the paper that made an abstract image of a young man holding a heart. Lucy dreamed of a future with Max, and believed that everything would be all right. The next day, as she was walking to her studies, she saw him. "What are you doing here?" She didn't understand. "I wanted to meet you," he honestly admitted. Understandably, The girl realized that their relationship was becoming more serious every day. Together, they came to the educational institution. On the way they talked, Lucy told what her mom told her about him yesterday. Max was happy that nothing bad was said about him. The boy and the girl started dating. Now, no one was shy of anyone anymore. After studying, they went for walks. Often after the walks, they came to visit Lucy. Everything was very good. After Lucy finished the 4th year, she had to enter the institute. During the summer vacation, Max offered her to go on vacation to the south. "Max, do you have a driver's license?" Lucy's father asked him when they were discussing the vacation at their home. "I do. Why do you ask?" The boy was surprised. "You could take the car and go on vacation in it to make it more convenient for you," he said. "It's uncomfortable." The guy was embarrassed that complete strangers just trust him with their car. Uncomfortable to sleep on the ceiling," grinned the father. Max agreed, tucked him under the table. Girl. Together they were almost a year and a half, knew each other well, so they trusted. "Well, okay, if you ask." He looked at his favorite. "That's fine, Veronica. Do you want to go with them, or do you not want to take her with you?" Tony couldn't take his wife himself, but if his daughter and her friend took her along, he wouldn't mind her spending some time on vacation. "Why don't we? We'll take her." Lucy looked at the young man. "Of course we will." He had nothing against it. The women began to pack their things, of which they had taken a great deal. After that, they all got into the car, said goodbye to their father, and drove off. The way lay through many cities of the United States, in each of which Max, Lucy, and Veronica stopped. They took pictures, visited some sites, and drove on. It was fun in the car. The young people told stories and sang songs. Although the road took a lot of days, but these days remained unnoticed because there was always something to do. Had anyone thought about lodging? Veronica suddenly remembered. "Yes, we called when we were still in our town," agreed, "and rented a house," said her daughter. "Great, then let's go there. I would like to take a shower." It was obvious that the woman was a little tired. They arrived at the place where they were to spend the next 2 weeks. The young ones checked into one room, the mother into another. They started unpacking and agreed to meet in the courtyard by the pool in the evening. "Well, shall we make a plan? What we will do in the next 2 weeks?" Veronica asked the children. "Yes, what can be a plan? The sea, the sun, the beach, vacation. That's the whole planet," said the young people. "I do not argue with you." "Okay." The woman was only in favor. In the evening, they walked through the local stores, went to a small cafe, bought some homemade wine, and returned to their yard. "How nice it is here." Veronica sat down on a comfortable armchair that stood here. Max poured wine into glasses and brought them to the table. There was also cut watermelon, melon, lay other fruits. The family wanted to fry meat, but no one felt like doing anything this evening. "All right, we'll put off the shashlik for tomorrow," Max said in a businesslike manner. "No one is hungry today," the women agreed with him. The wine was very tasty, but after a couple of glasses, it wore out the vacationers, and everyone went to their rooms. "What shall we do tomorrow?" Max whispered to Lucy when they were going to bed. "Oh, let's think about it tomorrow." She didn't feel like talking. The next day in the morning, they went to the sea because it was not hot, and before lunch they wanted to go home. Veronica was everywhere, unstoppable with them. Of course, at first it embarrassed her, but then the young ones convinced the woman that she was not disturbing anyone. They had plenty of time and at night to talk to the two of them. Only then did the woman calm down. After 3 days in the south, Max called Lucy for a ride around the city and beyond. "You won't be offended if I don't go with you?" The mother came out to them. "Of course not, rest up," Max told her. They drove through the city, saw what it was like here, and afterward drove outside of it. With an artist's eye, they saw how beautiful it was, and they wanted to see something that they would immediately want to put on paper. "Look how beautiful it is there," Lucy showed him in the distance. It was almost sunset, and it was really beautiful on the horizon. They drove there, and on the bridge the boy lost control. "Ah!" screamed Lucy, and that was the last thing the guy heard. He tried to turn the wheel, but he couldn't do it. They smashed through the bridge railing and the car went flying down. "Lucy, Lucy, Lucy, Lucy." He was rubbing her shoulders, but the girl was unconscious. His legs were jammed up himself, and he couldn't do anything. Someone must have seen it happen, because after a while, various services arrived, ambulance, police. It took a long time to get Max out of the car, just like Lucy. They were both taken to the local hospital. The girl was unconscious, and from there the guy called Veronica and told her what had happened. It was very scary and bitter to realize that everything was bad. "Where's my daughter? What's wrong with her?" A disheveled woman ran into the hospital. "Calm down, she's in intensive care," the doctor stopped her. Lucy was indeed in intensive care. Her spine was damaged and the bones in her legs were shattered. Max, on the other hand, had more minor fractures, a broken knee, and a few sprains in his other leg. "Max, how did this happen?" His mother sobbed on his shoulder. "I don't know. We were cut off by a car. I started to turn the steering wheel since we were on the bridge. I couldn't control it, and we fell down," he said. In fact, his temples were throbbing. He realized that he should not have taken that car because he had not sat behind the wheel for a long time. But what was the use of waving his fist now that the fight was over? The guy lay on the bed, tears flowing from his eyes. No one knew exactly what had happened to Lucy. All the diagnoses were made at random. But when a few weeks passed, it was clear that the girl's spine was damaged seriously and that she would not walk in the near future. So it is absolutely certain. "Beloved, forgive me," sat Max beside her bed. He himself was in a cast, but could move quietly on crutches. "Don't worry about me too much," the girl told him. "How can I not worry if it's all my fault?" he told her. "It could happen to anyone." Lucy lay on the bed immobilized on her back and looked at the ceiling. "Love, I'm going to say a terrible thing. You want to judge me for it. You want to do whatever you want, but I have to go home." He saw the girl's eyes widen, but she didn't say anything to him. Only tears flowed from her eyes. "I will not leave you. I will help you financially," Max told her, but he did not look at her. "It's okay," she only answered him. When Veronica learned that Max was leaving, she did not say anything to him, just like her daughter, just looked at him when he was taken away by car. After that, mother and daughter stayed in this city for 4 more months. First, they were in the same hospital, and then they were moved to a rehabilitation center paid for by the father. The doctors did what they could with her, but nothing could be done. Lucy never got back on her feet. And then they moved to their own town, but the lessons didn't end there. Daddy did not spare any money. He hired a rehabilitologist who came to their home, gave the girl massages. She'd had more than one surgery by then. "What do you do?" Her mother used to drop by. "Nothing, I draw." She looked at the table, where there was a sheet of paper. Lately, Lucy's drawings were in dark colors. Some kind of circles with thorns, like wrap wire. Lucy hadn't been out for a long time. She didn't socialize with anyone. Like before, she was always at home. "Daughter, you don't need to lock yourself in. You have talent. Your hands work. Your head works too. You can draw." And without getting up from the chair, though it was painful, but her mother told her. "No, I can't," her mom told her. "Why can't you? What's stopping you?" She didn't understand. "I ran out of inspiration." Her eyes were very sad. The girl was ready to cry. "Do you want me to call Max?" her mom asked her. "No, you don't need to call him. Let him build his life," her daughter told her. "But you can't do that. You're still very young. You have everything ahead of you. My father and I will not spare any money for you to recover." The woman did not give up. "Okay, Lucy has been thinking about it for a long time. I want to start a foundation." A man wrote her an email. He saw her works on the internet and now he wanted to buy one of them. And when he found out that she was disabled, he also paid her. Then the girl thought that her talent was not wasted. She will write, sell, and help sick people. "I don't get it. What foundation?" Her mom sat down across from her. "To help people who are in the same situation as me." She put her hands on her lap. "I don't mind. I'll even help you with that," she told her daughter. When her father came home in the evening, they talked it over and decided that everything was possible. The very next day, Lucy started looking for people on the internet who would agree to volunteer at her foundation. Strangely enough, many people responded on the first evening. The girl's sessions with the rehabilitator did not stop, just as she traveled to various clinics. These were both American and foreign medical centers. At home, near the exercise machine, Lucy could even stand up on her own. "I am so happy for you, daughter. Her mother supported her in everything. But this support was not enough. The girl kept thinking about Max. You think about him, don't you? Often her mother sat down near the girl when she was resting, took her hand, and together they were silent. Don't bring him up, okay, her daughter asked her. Okay, we won't. The woman sighed heavily. She was in just as much pain as her daughter. 2.5 years passed after the accident. Lucy got up one morning and asked her mom to take her to the park today. There was a party there. A lot of people were there, and Lucy wanted to raise some money from people who cared. Of course we'll do it, the woman agreed with her. While Veronica was getting ready, Lucy wrote to all her helpers that today they would be present at the holiday. No one refused her. Naturally, her dad put in the first sponsorship, and they headed over to where there were a lot of people today. Hello. For the first time, Lucy met her volunteers who were already waiting for her in the square of the park. Oh, you're in a chair. I didn't expect to see her like this. Yes, what's the big deal? She didn't understand. Lucy brought with her a lot of pictures that she had painted before, and now she was ready to portray anyone, just to earn some money. No one had ever applied to her foundation. She volunteered to help those she knew needed help. And today, she knew that there was a little boy in their town who had scalded himself very badly and needed money for an operation. The plan was to raise money for it today. So, which one of you can do what? Lucy asked the helpers. I'll paint, she said to herself. Some went off to make jewelry to sell, some to make something else. Everyone was busy. Lucy collected them by the end of the evening. She wanted to see how much money they had raised today. I enjoyed working today. Not only did I bring joy to people, but it wasn't useless. The young man put a stack of money on the table. Wow, the others raised their eyebrows in surprise. I earned a little money too. Lucy put her savings on the table. When they counted it all up, it turned out that the operation, at least the first one, should be enough. It couldn't help but feel good. They'd all said goodbye, each of them promising to keep doing it. To send pictures to Lucy's website, where she could sell paintings, jewelry, and anything else the volunteers made with their own hands. And that was the end of it. Mom, can you help me? She looked back at the woman sitting off to the side. Yes, of course. Are you done yet? She approached her. Veronica took hold of the handles of the stroller, and they drove down the alley to the park exit. Look, an invalid, they heard from the side. How dare you? Veronica turned to them. On a bench sat young men. You could see that they were majors. In front of them was a small table with snacks and beer. What are you yapping about? One of them was sitting leg to leg. How dare you talk to me like that? First of all, I'm old enough to be your mother, and secondly, to laugh at an invalid. It's a sin. It's good that it didn't happen in your life. The woman was indignant to the core. Mom, let's get out of here. Lucy wanted them to leave. No way, wait, he approached them. What else did you want? The woman looked at him defiantly. Are you being rude to me? He stood and looked at the woman with insolence. Veronica compressed her lips. She rolled the stroller back and wanted to go around him, but he with a laugh blocked her way. Where are you going? The young man asked him. Please step back. We need to pass. Look Veronica in his eyes. What if we don't? He looked at his friends and smirked. It seemed like he was showing off in front of them. Go away, went the woman at him. Shay, can't you get up at all? He asked, looking at Lucy. Please, can we come through? She looked up at him. Or maybe I want you to sit with us. You collected donations today, so make it nice and I'll donate. And he and his friends began to cackle. And we don't want that. The mother was already shaking from the insolence of this man. Let's check it out. He grabbed her arm and dragged her from the chair. What are you doing? The woman screamed. Look, we look together. Aha, laughed at the girl. The guy impressed her to himself. Put her in her seat, Veronica shouted. Or what's going to happen? The major continued to laugh. Harvey, for real, put her in her place, already stood up for Lucy, his friends. And you too, look, and he, like a marionette, led her, moving his legs and pushing the girl. He laughed so hard that tears flowed from his eyes. At that moment, Lucy's father arrived at the gate. Tony, as soon as he saw his daughter being bullied, he immediately ran towards them. The man almost forcefully snatched his daughter from the hands of the guy and put her back in the chair. Bastard, how dare you do that to a disabled person? He began to reprimand him. "Here, uncle, go by," still laughed Harvey. "We'll go away, but just look. Laughing at other people's grief should never happen, no matter how in your life such a thing happens," said the unhappy father. Come on, get out of here," laughed the young man. "Lucy, how are you doing?" Her mom leaned over to her. "Everything is fine," cried the girl. She was ashamed that everything happened like that, but she could not do anything. The parents brought the stroller to the car, put their daughter in it, and drove home. The car ride was silent. No one said anything. Lucy thought that she would study even more to prove to everyone that it was possible to get up even after such an accident. "Hello," Lucy called the next day to the sick boy's mom. "Good afternoon," said the grief-stricken mother. "Yesterday at the holiday my fund flowers collected for your son a sum of money, which is enough for the first operation," said Lucy. "What? We didn't come to you?" The woman was surprised and amazed. "Yes, but I saw that it happened and decided to help." The girl spoke kindly to her. "I don't understand. You are so kind." It was heard that the boy's mother cried. "Today will come one of those who will give you the money." That's the end of the conversation. After that, a lot of people found out about the local foundation. Some of them, when they heard this, Harvey had been born to mom and dad when they were in their late 40s. Of course, the boy didn't understand anything from childhood, but he knew that there was a family rich. They lived in a large house. The boy went to a private kindergarten. Whatever he wanted, he always had as a child. "Mom, why don't we go on vacation?" He asked the woman when school started on vacation. "Why don't we go? We will," she would tell him. Everything, always and everywhere, whatever the boy asked for, he had. When he was in the 8th grade, his dad taught him how to drive a car. By 9th grade, he had his own. He didn't want to study much, so he finished school, and after that, his dad helped him buy a diploma. "So you're not going to do anything?" His mom was worried about him. She realized that she and his father were not getting any younger, and her son could be left without anything. "Oh, I'm fine as I am," Harvey told her. Every day he would gather friends at home. His parents provided it all. They never said anything to their son, so they had him as a spoiled young man. "Harvey, if I stopped doing my business, who would carry it on?" His father often sat down to talk to him. "What's to continue it? You have deputies, directors." His father had a small factory, which brought a lot of profit. The guy did not think about anything at all. On his mind were only friends, drinking and partying. Girls he also went through and changed like gloves. None of them he felt any real feelings for. A scoundrel screamed to him the next passions and ran away from him. "Yes, a scoundrel, but there's variety," he told her afterwards. He never felt sorry for anyone. He was ready to throw anyone in trouble. For this he was not liked by many, but friends with him did not stop. Once he was in a club with his comrades. They, as usual, sat at a table, drinking. Everything was good and fun. The guy saw a girl he liked. "Look, did you know her?" he asked his friends. "No." First time seeing her, they looked at the one their friend was pointing at. So Harvey turned on all his charm, got his money ready, and went to seduce his new acquaintance. "Hi," he shouted loudly to overpower the music. "Hi," she shouted back. "Let's go to the bar," he called out to her. They moved from the dance floor to behind the bar, sat on the stools there. Harvey immediately ordered cocktails for himself and her. Harvey introduced himself and he held out his glass to her. "Veronica," she smiled back and accepted the treat. "Are you here alone?" the young man asked her, referring to her male companion. With friends, she looked over to where she had just danced. There were 2 other girls there. "And me and my friends," he showed her to the VIP area, from where 2 young men waved to her. "Nice," she took a sip. Harvey looked at this girl and didn't understand what it was about her that got him. She seemed like an ordinary girl, like everyone else, but there was something about her that attracted him. "Let's go to our table," he called out to her. "Come on," she nodded to her friends and they followed her. Everyone at the table got to know each other, and the night was fun. When Harvey once again went to the bathroom and came back, the girls were not at the table. "Where are the girls?" he asked his friends. They said they'd gone home, and they shrugged. "Why didn't you stop them? We would have walked them home." Harvey wondered. "What? You would have walked them home?" They were surprised. It was the first time they had heard a friend say that. I don't know why, but Veronica's got me hooked, he admitted to his friends. And what an ordinary girl, like many? They were surprised. I tell you, I don't know. I'm amazed at myself. He sat down and took the glass in his hands. The next day, he tried to look for the girl, but he had no luck. In the evening, he went to the club again, but Veronica wasn't there. Did you happen to take those girls' phone numbers? Harvey asked his friends. No, they looked at each other. Usually, if they met girls at the club, it was for one night, just for fun. Harvey himself was the first to do that. Shit, how am I going to find her? The young man thought. From that day on, for a month, every night, he went to this club. He didn't care about any other girls, neither cocktails nor dancing. He was looking for Veronica. And now, after a month, he didn't expect anything. But when he came there, he saw her behind the bar. Hi, Harvey quickly approached her. Oh, hey, she looked at him. Where have you been? He looked at her like she was a miracle. What do you mean? She didn't know what he was talking about. Then, at the club, you left. You didn't leave any phone numbers, nothing. I only know your name. Been looking for you all this time, but couldn't find you. He told her honestly. I didn't think you liked me that much. Veronica smiled to herself. Harvey ordered cocktails again. They sat for a while, danced, and then he invited her to walk around the night city. The girl was pleased with all this. She went with him. They wandered the streets, walked in the park, and only in the morning he walked her home. Do you live here? He was surprised when they reached one of the high-rise buildings. No, I won't tell you where I live yet. She averted her eyes. Well, okay. At least leave your phone number, he asked her. They exchanged phone numbers and Harvey went home happy. The next day, as soon as he woke up, he dialed the girl's number. Hi, he said hello to her. Hi, she answered him. Shall we go out tonight? He asked seriously. Veronica was silent for a while, then agreed. She had set up a meeting for him near the park, and Harvey couldn't wait for the evening when the meeting would take place. Tonight he'd gotten a car, and she and he had taken it for a midnight drive. Let's go to my place, Harvey told her as they were getting ready to go home. No, it's late. I have to go home. She didn't want to rush things. Good, Harvey marveled to himself. Earlier he would have started kissing her right there in the car. But he didn't want to do that to Veronica. He drove her back to the same place where they'd parted yesterday and drove home. Son, what's going on with you? His mom asked him. Your face is gone. I'm fine, he said. But I can see that it's not normal. Before you were not to be found at home. And now you come early, sitting at home sad. Sat down at the table opposite his mother. I think I've fallen in love, he said to the most dear person. What are you doing? She splashed her hands. Mom had been waiting for this moment because she knew that her son could not be like this as he was before. Yes, and this girl is different, he sighed. What's she like? I wanted to know more about the mother. If before I could just wave my finger at anyone and she would follow me and do whatever I wanted. This one saw that I have money and a car and I live in a good house, but whatever I told her, she all answers that let's not rush things, goes home and behaves differently than everyone else, he shared with his mother. But not everyone is like you thought. Mom smiled to herself. She was happy that finally her son may be settling down. And indeed, he began to dress differently than before, to go to the stores, to buy some gifts, to take care of his girlfriend. Veronica, you and I have been together for 3 months now. Maybe we should meet the parents. He suggested it. Isn't it early? She looked at him. I guess not. He didn't understand what the big deal was. All right, I'll meet your parents. Veronica did mine. Inside, Harvey was so happy. He couldn't believe that the girl had agreed. With that, they drove to this house. His mom had already been warned that he might be coming with a girl in the evening, so she was waiting for them. They went to the kitchen, sat down at the table. The father was not at home, but the mother was busy in the kitchen. What are you doing, Veronica? She asked her. I was studying. Now I'm on vacation, the girl said. It was clear. The woman saw that she did not want to talk to her. Mom prepared everything and left the kitchen, did not disturb the young people. Why don't we go to my room? Harvey asked her for good luck. Let's go, but not today, was unapproachable Veronica. They sat a little longer. The father never returned and the girl got up and said she had to go home. Harvey drove her, came back. Her mom had already cleared everything off the table. So what did you think of her? The guy asked her. I don't know. You have to live with her. Mom was happy on one hand. I don't know either. I fell in love like a juvenile fool. It had never happened to me before. And now I can't help thinking about her even for a minute, he honestly told his mother. Their meetings continued for another 6 months, but the girl still did not let Not come closer to himself, nor kiss, nor do anything. Whatever Harvey did, she either did not perceive or she did not like it. Will you marry me? One day they met in the park. What? She looked at him. Didn't you hear what I asked you? He stood there, his eyes downcast. I heard, but isn't it a bit early? It seemed like Veronica didn't want to socialize with this man at all. I don't know what else I can do for you. I love you more than anyone else in the world, and I am ready to do anything for your sake, even this step, he honestly admitted. Okay, I'll think about it, she replied. Maybe we could go to a restaurant and celebrate, Harvey suggested. Okay, I agreed. Veronica smiled and got into the car. They arrived at the restaurant, where a table was already booked. You assumed, yes, that I would agree, she guessed. Well, how without it? The guy didn't know where to put his hands. It was the first time he had such excitement. When the waiter brought champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Harvey pulled a ring out of his pocket and handed the box to Veronica. Harvey, you're so good, she looked at him. Veronica, I love you so much. He took her hands in his. No one recognized what had happened to the young man. He withdrew from his friends, no longer went out at night, spent all his time with his girlfriend, and she was unapproachable. When they applied to the registry office, Veronica called him for a walk. They sat on a bench. She took his hand and looked into his eyes. Do you want to tell me something? He guessed. Yes, she answered. Speak, I'm listening to you. Harvey thought to himself the worst, that now she would refuse him, go away, and they would never see each other again. Harvey, why do you think you've never seen my parents and don't know where I live? Because I was raised in an orphanage, and I live with 2 other girls. We rent an apartment. Now she wasn't looking at him. What's the big deal? I've got a big house, plenty of room for everyone. He was surprised that she couldn't tell him the truth about herself from the beginning. I didn't want you to think I was into you for the money or the house or anything like that, she twiddled her thumbs. Silly girl, he hugged her, and so they sat like that for a long time. It seemed to Harvey that he was the happiest man in the world, for the one he loved so much had agreed and opened herself to him. He had already imagined what kind of wife she would be, how they would live together, and everything else. I didn't expect you to take it all so well. Veronica hugged her chosen one for the first time. Preparations for the wedding began. Harvey's parents supported their children in everything. They spared no expense on a dress for the bride and also bought a suit for the groom. The restaurant, the guests, the groceries, everything was taken care of by the father as usual. I didn't even expect it to be like this, Veronica said to her future husband. That's not all. He did not like the soul in the one he chose as his wife. Now friends who came to visit them saw a completely different person, not the Harvey they knew before. Everyone helped with everything. No one was left out. If it was necessary to buy groceries, Harvey only had to ask some friend and he would bring the groceries. The girls also helped Veronica with the preparations for the wedding. Harvey wanted to make the best holiday for his girlfriend. Why are you spending so much? A simple painting would be enough for us, she told him. You are the best girl in the world, and you deserve a good party, he told her. You're so good, though I didn't think so at first, she told him back. The wedding was to take place at the end of the summer, and everyone was looking forward to it. How many guests will you have? The mother asked her son. How many will not be all ours? He laughed in response. Son, have you ever thought that you need to get a job somewhere because you will have to provide for the family, she said to him. No, I haven't thought about it yet, he honestly admitted. In fact, he had thought about getting a job with his father, at least to see what they do there. But he was so used to doing nothing that he didn't want to. Veronica had to study for another year, so he didn't even count on her. Move in with me, he told her the next time he saw her. I'll get married, then I'll move in, she told him. Why do you keep stalling? Are you afraid of me? He wondered. I'm not afraid of you. I just do everything by the rules. The bride and groom must live in separate houses, she said. I don't understand it, Harvey. Though he had been decent lately, sometimes the old young man he used to be woke up in him. All the time he and Veronica had been dating, they hadn't even kissed once, let alone more. That's why the guy was nervous sometimes. A week before the wedding, he started having some anxiety. He didn't know what was going on. Harvey, calm down, his mom told him. I cannot. This is a very serious step. Now he fully realized that in a few days he will be unfree. He would have to be responsible not only for himself, but also for his family. And now the day had come. Friends, girlfriends, redemption, registry office, restaurant. Congratulations, it was like a fog. The young sat at the table, but it seems that Harvey without wine was drunk with happiness. After that, in the house of the groom's parents, half was allocated for the accommodation of the young. At one time, Veronica was shy about doing anything there, because two hostesses could not be in the kitchen. But then she saw that Colin's mother was not so young anymore, and it was difficult for her to do all the housekeeping. She began to help her with everything, and Harvey at the same time began to go to work with his father. He wasn't exactly young, but he didn't know much about life. Well, why are you so armless? Sighed father. He realized that he cannot do much and that soon it will be time for him to retire, and there is no replacement for him. It was you who made me like this, said his son. Since childhood, you have not taught me anything. You paid money for everything, hired specialists, bought a diploma, so I have not learned anything. It was hard to realize that. At least you got a good wife, my father sighed. Toward New Year's Eve, everything was fine. They were going to celebrate the family holiday. Harvey, did you buy Veronica a present? His mother asked him. No, I'll give her the money and let her buy it herself, he said. It's nicer to get a surprise than to choose one for yourself, she advised him. Harvey wanted to work for his father, but he never learned anything, and he still took money from the common purse. At the holiday table on New Year's Day sat 4 people, Harvey, his wife, and his parents. Well, first Mom started talking. I want to give you a present. You? Her husband stared at her. Veronica looked at her husband while her mother left the table, went to the dresser, and came back. My children, I see that Veronica is not quite comfortable living with us in the same house, so we consulted and decided to buy you an apartment. She handed the keys to her son. Mom, he looked at her. Yes, don't ask anything. Move in and live. She sat back down. Everyone was happy. And I have a New Year's present for you too, Veronica told them. And what is it? The parents were surprised because they realized that the girl was studying. She could not give them anything that would surprise them very much. Harvey, you will soon be a daddy and you will be grandparents, she announced to them, and put a pregnancy test on the table, which had 2 red stripes on it. Veronica, the mother, jumped up from her seat and began to hug her daughter-in-law. Beloved, Harvey looked at her with big eyes. I was already thinking we wouldn't live to see this moment, muttered the woman. I am happy. The husband's father got up and also hugged his daughter-in-law. No one had words. They sat and looked at the girl, and the girl at them. From that day, Harvey and Veronica moved into their own apartment. Though the girl was studying, she had time for a lot of things. She arranged the coziness of the house, did everything for her husband so that he was always fed and fed. You are the best thing that could happen to me in life, he told her. And you with me, she would hug her husband. Harvey still traveled to his father's factory. He was the youngest technician there, but that didn't embarrass him. He was different now than he had been a few years ago. Oh, Veronica clutched her stomach in the evening. It's still early. Harvey was afraid. I don't know, she looked at him with eyes so big and frightened that the young man's hands shook. He didn't know what to grab onto. Quickly, he grabbed his car keys, the bag he had prepared just in case, and they quietly went downstairs. His wife was sitting up, only screaming in the backseat. Be patient, love. They were at the hospital in half an hour. The doctors immediately picked up the girl and led her away. Harvey was left alone in the hallway. He didn't know what to do. He sat in the chair, then called his parents. What's the matter with you? His mother was worried. Can I come to you? He asked her. Why do you ask? Come in everything. She was worried too. The young man did not know whether to leave the hospital, but at the last moment decided that he had nothing to do here. When everything happens, his wife will call, and report it. Or maybe it's just false labor because the due date is still a month away. Well, how are you? A woman asked him when he arrived at his parents' house. I don't know. He went to the kitchen. His mom poured him some soothing tea. As he sat in the kitchen and drank the tea, his phone rang. What? He shouted into the receiver. His mother looked at her son with big eyes. What's going on there? She realized it was the maternity hospital calling. They're calling me. Veronica's not well, Harvey said in a lifeless voice. So why are you sitting there, Ghost? She sent him. Harvey couldn't drive himself. His father drove him, and when they arrived at the maternity hospital, something terrible was going on. Doctors were rushing around, and at one point a doctor ran up to Harvey, grabbed him by the arm, and dragged him along. Your wife just gave birth and is dying of blood loss, she told him on the way. What, like dying? He didn't believe what the woman was saying. But when they were in the ward, Veronica was already unconscious. She was transferred to the intensive care unit. The young mother never regained consciousness. 2 days later, she was gone. All this time, Harvey was in the hospital, his father by his side. When they were informed of the death of his daughter-in-law and wife, the father felt bad. He lost consciousness. Help, was frightened son. That now also will lose a parent. Immediately, the doctors came running. They put the man on a gurney and took him away. Mom did not know what to do, Harvey. He did not say anything to the woman, afraid that she will become bad from what he heard. What's wrong? She kept asking. But 40 minutes later, the woman was here too. Veronica died. He looked at his mother with empty eyes. What? Where's the baby? She got very agitated. He's all right, cried Harvey. After that, the son went to the doctors and asked to be sedated. The mother was not so young, so the son was afraid to talk to her about further. He brought water, pills, and after the mother drank it all, he took her hand and told her about his father. Even after taking a sedative, the woman did not take the information well. I need to go to him, the woman said. At that moment, the doctor came out into the corridor. He looked at the people who were sitting in the corridor, approached them. What you say? The woman felt something wrong. Your husband and father are also gone. We did everything we could. He waved his hands. Mom, Harvey screamed. I'm all right. She was a woman and therefore strong. Realized that there was a small child left in her arms and no one to deal with him. And what do we do now? Harvey covered his eyes with his hands. Nothing can be done now. You need to live on. Looked at one point of the woman. There were so many thoughts in her head that she could not keep track of them all at once. A few days later, they took the child from the hospital. It was a boy who was named John. The father's body was also given to them at once, but Veronica was left behind. An autopsy was to be held to find out what the woman had died of. Harvey, take care of John, his mother told him, because she had to take care of the funeral, to do everything. She couldn't do it alone, and he was depressed. He didn't want anything, and he didn't need that child. His favorite woman died because of him. He just hated it. Harvey got up, got dressed, and went to his apartment. Where are you? His mother called him. I'm home, he told her calmly. Why are you home when you have so much to do? She didn't understand him. I do not need this child. Give him to the orphanage, he told her calmly. What are you saying? This is your son and my grandson. I cannot give him away. You will betray Veronica, she told him. But Harvey didn't listen. He took a bottle from the bar, and now he wanted only one thing, to get drunk and forget himself. The woman hired people to bury her husband and daughter-in-law. She also paid money for a woman to babysit John. Harvey was all this time unknown where he was, unknown with whom, and unknown what he was doing. A month after all this happened, Harvey came to his mother's house. Come in, she looked at him. He was all thin and gaunt, black bruises under his eyes. I don't want to live, he told her. Come and look at John. Your son is very much like you. You must live for him now, she told him. The father walked into the room. He looked at his child. He hated him. One had to get used to living alone, but how to do it, no one knew. And 6 months later, another difficulty began. My father's companion, who had half of the shares of the plant, said that he was taking over the management of the plant. By what right? Half of the shares inherited by his mother. Could not understand Harvey. No, not half. I own 51%, and your mother only 40%. the companion told him. When did that happen? Harvey didn't understand. He'd always thought his father owned the plant. A long time ago, I bought the shares from some of the employees, he told him. Harvey realized that they were losing their plant, and what to do now was not clear at all. And since he did not understand anything about this production, he could not work there. Everything was sad, and it was unknown what to expect from the future. Mom, let's sell the apartment, her son told her. Yes, I agree with your proposal, because we have practically no means of subsistence, she told him. First, they sold the apartment, then the shares of the factory. Now they had only the house left. The mother and Harvey did not work anywhere. When the boy turned 3, it became clear that he was not in good health. They took him for a checkup, and the doctors were just throwing up their hands. When they took a pluck from him for histology, it turned out that he was developing a terrible disease. If something is not done in the next year, then, most likely, we will not be able to save the boy, the doctor said. What is it? Why is it so bad? Harvey asked his mother. I don't know, she sighed. From that moment on, the woman and her son began to look for ways out of the situation. They didn't know who to turn to, who to ask, or what to do. In winter, the woman's heart became bad. They had to call an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital. Please, just don't go, Harvey asked her. Sonny, I'll do everything I can, and she cried. Harvey realized that now he was left alone with his troubles, and what to do. The man did not know at all. He started surfing the internet, looking for a solution to the problem. At some point, he came across a fund that was in their city that could help and raise money for the operation. Hello, he dialed the number that was listed on the website. Good afternoon, the Flowers Foundation welcomes you, a female voice answered him. Can I come to you? He asked. It was the last instance to which the inconsolable father could turn. Yes, of course. What is your problem? Asked on the other end. I'll tell you everything when I get there, he promised. Harvey quickly packed and drove to where he was expected in an hour. On the way, in his head, he was running through what and how he would tell. The man did not like to ask, but now it was necessary. He drove up to the building, sat in the car for a long time, and then got out of it and headed for the entrance. He entered one of the offices. There was a woman sitting at the desk. He walked through and sat across from her. Hello, he looked at her and waited to see what she would ask him. Greetings. Lucy recognized the man immediately. She felt a twitch. I would like to ask for your help, he said, and lowered his head. And yet there is justice, she smiled, though she didn't know what had happened or who needed help. I don't get it, he stared at her. Of course, you don't remember me, but I remember you well. She turned on the chair to the window. Yes, I don't remember you. He looked at the hostess of this foundation. We study or work together somewhere. No, she turned back to him. Where did you meet then? He needed to know now. Does this remind you of anything? She pointed to the wheelchair. No, should it? He thought about it. Your name is Harvey and you're the local bigwig, Lucy told him. Not for a long time now, he realized. This woman must be from his past life. Ah, and when had things changed? She eyed him with a sneer. Many years had passed since Lucy had last met Harvey. In that time, a great many changes had taken place in the girl's life. She'd had a lot of work with doctors. She had traveled abroad. She had metal vertebrae put in. And now she could not only stand on a support, but also move around. Without a stick or a walker, it was not very long, but with a support, almost constantly. Lucy did not give up her art. She continued to paint and sell her paintings. Often she held individual exhibitions, from which all the money was transferred to charity. Lucy lived with her parents, who still help her with everything. Tell me straight, you asked me for money and I didn't help you. He was sitting across from her. No, I would never ask you, she lowered her eyes. What then? Did I deceive you and you wanted to kill yourself out of unhappy love? He guessed. Oh, no need to be deceived on your own account, she laughed. Let's talk openly, he asked Lucy. Well, remember the party in the park? I think it was City Day then, she began to remind him. Oh, what else? I have to memorize all the holidays. Now he really thought that he had picked her up that night and then dumped her, so she remembered him. Well, if you don't remember me, why should I help you now? She looked at him intently. You will not help me, but my child. And he began to tell her what had happened. Would you like me to remind you what happened with you and me? She looked at him with a half smile on her face. I do, he nodded. Then Lucy began to tell him how he pulled her out of her wheelchair, how he laughed at her and made fun of her in front of her friends. I'm sorry, that wasn't me. There's a different person in front of you now. He dropped to his knees and was now looking down at her. If it wasn't the baby that was sick, but you. I would never help, Lucy sentenced. I'm sorry. Harvey was still on his knees. It looked like he was about to cry. Stand up. Let's decide what to do, she said seriously. Harvey stood up. He pulled out of his briefcase all the papers he had on him, the doctor's report, the tests, and everything else. This wasn't the first time Lucy had seen something like this. She knew what had to be done. Do you have any money? She asked Harvey. I could sell the house, but then I'd have nowhere to live, he said. No, you don't need to sell the house. Let's think about something else. Lucy looked out the window. She was thinking about when and where she could organize an exhibition and what she could sell at it. I have some antique furniture, he told her. Now, that's a different conversation, she perked up, because there was a big demand for antiques in their town too. When and where can I spend what? He asked her. I have a few paintings at home, as well as volunteers who do various crafts. All this we will collect in the next few days, and I think that at the end of the month we will organize an auction, she told him. As they were about to finish their conversation, Lucy's mother walked into Lucy's office. She saw Harvey and stopped at the door. What's he doing here? She asked her daughter. Mom, his son is not well. He needs help. I can't say no to a child, she said, looking at her. You were a child too when he abused you, she reminded her. That was a long time ago and not true, Lucy said, and closed her eyes. But you remember him, don't you? The woman looked at Harvey with hatred. He who remembers the past will be put out of this sight, said the fund manager and wrote something down on a piece of paper. She handed it to the man sitting across from her, which turned out to be her phone number. What is it? He asked her. It's my direct number. Call me immediately, she told him. Thank you. He knelt down in front of her. She then held onto the windowsill to watch Harvey walk out of the building and get into his car. He's got a car. He can sell that too, she said aloud. Harvey drove home. He called every friend he could. Some of them asked for money. Some of them lent it to him. That evening, he called Lucy. Harvey, I saw you leaving in your car today. Is it yours? The girl asked. Yes, mine, he said. And at that moment, he realized what she wanted to offer him. Do you agree to sell it? She asked her question. Of course, to make amends to you and to help my son. I am ready for anything, he said in such a tone that she felt sorry for him. You don't make it up to me. You owe it to your son, she said, and remembered how badly she had felt, and her father had done everything to help her. From that day on, Harvey and Lucy became close. John was in the hospital with his grandmother, and his father was doing everything he could to help him raise money for the operation. Harvey, Lucy called him every day. She asked him how John was doing, what had been raised, and what the doctors were saying. Hi, they chatted like old acquaintances. No change yet. That's too bad. The girl knew from herself how important it was to make progress all the time, but hopefully it was still small, and the body was renewing itself constantly. Are you calming me down on purpose? He asked her. No, it was. She had already found the room where the sale would be held. Now all that was left was to set a day and bring everything there. Dad, will you help? The girl asked her father. She could solve everything on paper, but it was still as difficult for her to move around. Of course, why do you ask? Everything you do goes plus to your karma. He hugged his daughter, who had already overcome a lot. From that day on, they started to bring in furniture that Harvey had at home into one of the buildings in town. His car was also for sale. Lucy's paintings and all the crafts that had been made by her own hands were all taken to the same premises. Now all that was left to do was to wait for a certain day and sell everything. People were invited who wanted to help and were happy to do so. Worried, looked Lucy at her new acquaintance and old enemy. You know, if someone did to me what I did to you, I wouldn't help them, and you have a big heart. All right, quiet. It's starting. She put her finger to her lips. It had indeed begun. The sale was going very briskly. Some items were selling for such a price it was unbelievable. Wow, you're doing great, whispered Lucy to Harvey. Quiet, she hissed at him. After a few hours, it was all over. All that was left was to count how much money had been made. What do you think? Lucy looked at Harvey. I can't even guess. He knew there was more than just cash. There's enough here for your son's operation, but there's still some left over. She smiled and Harvey came over and gave her a hug. What are you doing? She looked up at him like she did then. Lucy, you're the second person after Veronica that I respect and appreciate, he admitted. I believe you. I understand that when someone you love is sick, you'll do anything to make them feel better. Her eyes grew sad. Tell me your story, he asked her. If we keep talking, some other time, she told him. Okay, he walked around the chair, grabbed the handles, and rolled her toward the exit. The next day, Harvey called John's doctor, told him they had raised the money and were ready for the surgery. You do realize that if it's successful, the boy will need care, the doctor asked him. Of course, if earlier the man hated this child, that Veronica had died because of him, now he realized that it was the only thing left after her. Hi, Lucy had called him in the night. I didn't expect it, he told her honestly. I didn't expect it myself, but I can't stop thinking about you, she admitted to him. What will your mother say that you communicate with me no longer only about work? Grinned the man. I can't get you and your son out of my mind. Lucy realized that now she had helped them, and she might not be interested in this man anymore, but she couldn't help it. To be honest, I can't forget about you either, he said softly. Shall we meet? She suggested it. Now Harvey looked at his watch. It was the second hour of the night. Why not? She laughed. I agree anyway. John is asleep. They agreed where they would meet. Harvey left the house and went to the meeting place. Daddy, will you help me? As usual, the girl addressed him. What's the matter now? He looked at his watch too. I want to meet Harvey, she said and blushed. It is true what they say that from love to hate is one step. Only you have the opposite, laughed the man. Though he and his mother were against it, but since the girl forgave him and Harvey was not against communicating with her, they did not say anything. Hi, they met in the same park where they had an incident. Lucy, I remember everything. He came up to her. No, that's not why I called you here. She put her hands out in front of her. John is having surgery any day now. Will you be with me? He asked her. If you ask, I will. She held out her hand for him to help the girl stand up. Harvey gave her a helping hand. She rose from her chair and took a few steps towards him. Ooh, she stumbled and flew into his arms. Careful, he supported her. Sorry, she looked straight into his eyes. At that moment, Harvey pulled her close to him and wanted to kiss her, but at the very last moment stopped. I don't mind, she was ready for a kiss. You'll never forgive me, he pulled Lucy against him. I've already forgiven you. She closed her eyes and breathed in his scent. Okay, I don't mind being with you either, but let's wait until after the surgery, he asked her. Yes, I agree, because the baby's health is the most important thing right now. She sat back in her chair. Harvey had been holding her hand the whole time. Let me call a cab and walk you home, he suggested. No, my father's waiting for me over there, she pointed to the park gate. And he didn't tell you anything about coming to meet me here, the man questioned her. I think he and my mother have come to terms with my choice. She lowered her eyes and smiled. Who would have thought, when there was that situation, that it would be like this now? Harvey told her. He drove her down the alley. You don't know how much hate I had for you, she admitted to him and looked up. And I didn't even remember you. That's how it is in life. Sometimes you do something bad to a person. He remembers you in a bad word, and you don't even know about it. He regretted what he had done. Okay, let's not remember, she said. Promise me. Okay, if you insist, I promise. Harvey took her to the gate, but he didn't dare to go to the car. Aren't you coming? She asked him. No, I won't go today. Let's hang on. He nodded to the girl's father and walked in the opposite direction. A week later, the surgery was scheduled. John was taken to the regional center to have it done. Harvey and Lucy were by his side. Hi, the girl said to him. John looked at her and didn't say anything. If we're lucky, she'll be our mom, Harvey said in his ear. Mom? The boy raised questioning eyes at her. Why would you say something like that to him? Lucy liked the man, but she didn't know for sure yet if they were going to have a relationship or not. They were sitting in the hallway, holding hands. No one said anything to them. They were waiting for the surgery to be over. And then the doctor came out. Well, Harvey jumped up. You cannot worry, everything went well. Now he will be transferred to the intensive care unit, and tomorrow, if all is well, he will be in the intensive care unit, the man in a white coat told him. Harvey turned and looked at Lucy. He was happy. I congratulate you, she told him. This all happened thanks to you. I can't believe it's really true. Harvey paced back and forth in the hallway. Don't be silly. She was always happy when things went well for the people she helped. Excuse me for a minute. I need to call my mother, he said. Harvey stepped back, dialed his mom's number, told her everything that had happened. The woman was relieved. Well, thank God. At least one good news lately. Now we can die in peace, said the woman. What are you talking about? You still have to go to my wedding, said her son. What wedding? She didn't understand. Soon we will come home and tell you everything, he said, and hung up the phone. What did Mom say? Lucy smiled and looked at him. She doesn't know you, so what can she say? Harvey sat down beside her and put his arm around her. Don't you think we'd gotten on so fast? She asked him. But we've known each other a long time, he smiled and winked at her. Oh, yes, I forgot about that, she laughed. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay with me? Or are you going home? He talked to her like they were old acquaintances. I guess I'll go home. The others need my help too. I'll wait for you there. She looked at him with loving eyes. Okay, John doesn't need me today, and they won't let me in. I can walk you home. He grabbed the handles of the stroller and they went to the exit. Lucy drove home, thinking about Harvey. It had only been a little while and they already had such a relationship between them. She really liked the man. She didn't even think he could do anything bad again. Harvey returned to the hospital. He was in the hallway waiting to be called to go see his son. Excuse me, you've been sitting here for over 24 hours, a nurse approached him. Yes, why? Is it forbidden? He asked. No, we prepared a bed for you to rest on, she said. Thank you, I could use it now, he said in a stammering voice. Harvey went to the room where he was escorted, and no sooner had his head touched the pillow than he fell asleep. He dreamed that he and Lucy were walking somewhere holding hands. She was walking on her own feet, he beside her, and John with them. Harvey woke up with a smile on his face. He didn't realize where he was at first, but then he remembered everything and sat up on the bed. The same nurse came in to see him. Are you ready to meet your son? She asked him. Yes, of course. He looked at her with such eyes that he was ready for anything now. He was taken to his son's room. He was lying with his eyes open and looking at him. His head was bandaged. Sonny, my dear, hello. Now we will have a completely different life, he said to him and kissed him. The son took his hand and tried to smile. For 3 weeks, his father never left his side. And when they took off all the bandages and said he was fine, they were discharged home. Are you ready to meet your mom? Harvey told him. John was increasingly silent. He just nodded his head. They arrived home. Harvey's mom was already there. She welcomed her son and grandson with open arms. After they rested and ate, Harvey left to call Lucy. Hi, she answered him. You have no idea how much I missed you, he told her. I never thought I'd be so sentimental. Are you in town already? She asked him. Yes, we just got here a few hours ago. He didn't know what else to tell her. If you don't mind, I'm coming over to say hello to John. She stopped by from afar. Yes, of course, come over. We're both looking forward to seeing you. Was Harvey pleased to meet her? Lucy arrived at their house. Harvey met her by the gate. The woman came out too, to see who had come to see them. Hello, Lucy said to her. Hello, she looked at her son in surprise. Mom, don't be surprised. Lucy had been in an accident, now not for long, but she can get up, he immediately explained to her. They were in the house. John saw a familiar woman. He went over to her when she called him. Well, how's your health? Lucy asked him. Good, he nodded. And that's wonderful, she hugged the boy. Lucy, will you agree to be my wife? Harvey took a ring out of his pocket. Just like that. She didn't understand. Why drag it out? You have helped us so much. We have been without a mother for a long time. We want to have a mistress in our house, he said. Lucy cried and hugged the man. What's the matter with you? He didn't understand. I do not know why you need me, she told him. But if I become your wife, you will fulfill my most cherished wish. And what was that wish? Harvey didn't understand. After the accident, the fact that I will never walk, It was not the worst sentence. The doctor said that I will never be able to have children. And now you give me the right to have a child. She looked lovingly at the boy. Lucy, I will only be happy about it. Harvey raised his eyes to his mother. He realized that he had done everything wrong in his life. My dears, come into the kitchen. Their mom called them over. Thank you. Lucy saw that this house had no thresholds, as if it had been made especially for her. Did you notice? He saw her look at the thresholds. Did you do that just for me? She was surprised. Yes, I had to do something. It wasn't all about getting help myself. He walked over to her and they walked into the kitchen together. There the woman removed one chair from behind the table so that Lucy could drive up in her chair. Thank you, the girl looked at her. Why aren't your parents here? Harvey asked. They're outside the gate waiting. She looked up at him. So why did you leave them there? He did not understand, immediately got up from the table and went to the exit. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Harvey's mother took the kettle off the stove. It's all right, we'll explain everything to you one day. At that moment, the door slammed, and in a few seconds, Lucy's parents appeared in the kitchen. Everyone said hello, hugged, and whatever the relationship between Harvey and Lucy, for the sake of the children, everyone swallowed their grudges. So are we going to be a family? Harvey asked, sitting next to Lucy and holding her hand. Yes, answered Lucy, and looked at her mom and dad. Children, we wish you happiness, and hopefully it won't happen again like it already did between you. Her mother looked at Harvey. I promise you that your daughter is in the best of hands. They sat at the table for a while longer and separated. The grandmother was with John. Lucy's parents had gone home, and the young ones shut themselves in a room. Do you want me to tell you about John's mother? Harvey asked. Yes, nodded the girl. After she gave her consent, he told her everything, how they had everything, what he was like, how he changed, thanks to the ordinary girl from the orphanage. Lucy looked at him and could not believe that this was really the same young man with whom she had once had a scandal. Have you thought hard about wanting to commit to me? She asked him. You wouldn't believe how. It could be better, he hugged her. Lucy had not felt a man's caress for a long time, and now she felt such feelings for this man that no one could dissuade her from him. And the most important argument was John, whom in such a short time she had been able to love too. Lucy stayed at Harvey's house. Why don't you work anywhere? She asked him one day. You see, he told her everything as it was after her father died. And what, you sold all the stock? She wondered. Yes, he nodded and looked at his mother. They were having dinner. Why did you do that? She was amazed. We need to get a lawyer and sort this out, Lucy said. Don't mention it, Harvey's mother said. Well, if you don't want to talk about it, let's think about another case. She didn't back down. Okay, I agreed to everything. He smiled, looked at his mother, and kissed his future wife. My children, I do not know what kind of relationship between you, but I can see that you love each other, approached the mom after a few months. What are you talking about? Harvey thought she was saying goodbye to them. It wouldn't be long before she hugged them both. No, you can't say that, the son was sure. Listen to me, Lucy was right. I didn't sell all the shares in my father's factory. You can take them. And rejoined there, she held her son's face. Listen to me, Lucy smiled. A couple more months passed. Harvey and Lucy had their marriage ceremony. The young man insisted that they be married in a church. You do realize that this marriage is made in heaven? His wife looked at him. I believe our meeting was originally built in heaven. He hugged her and kissed her. It's okay, he adored the girl and hugged her all the time. I am so afraid to tell you the most cherished words. Although they had been together for a long time, she could admit it. She had once been betrayed by the closest person she trusted more than herself. And now it hurts so much to think that it was all for help. You're a fool. He pulled her tightly against him. Yes, I may be a fool, but I love you very much, she said. And I love you. Harvey never left his wife's side. John loved to climb on his mother's lap, and she even took him for rides around the house. Everything seemed to be going well for them. The girls' parents were often at their house, and they became friends with Harvey's mom. Harvey, Lucy screamed one morning. What happened? He was frightened and ran out of the room. The first thing he thought was that something had happened to his wife. Mom, she was standing over the woman who was lying on the kitchen floor. What happened? He leaned over, felt for a pulse, which wasn't there. Call an ambulance, Harvey said, tears in his eyes. God, it couldn't be. Lucy didn't want anyone to die in her life. Everything happens in life. He was very sad that his mother had passed away. "Hello, come quickly." She dictated the address into her phone. Harvey walked up behind her and gave her a hug. He couldn't hold back the tears. John was crying too. "Your mother must have realized you were in good hands. That's why she left us," Lucy said smugly. "You know how much I love you." His wife hugged him. As usual, the whole family was together. Mom was buried with her father, and they didn't have to mourn long because a couple months after the funeral, Lucy got sick. Harvey, she woke him up in the night. "What's the matter?" He was frightened. "I feel sick. I feel nauseous. I feel dizzy." "Has it really started all over again?" she told him. Now he picked up the phone, dialed the number of the ambulance. They arrived 10 minutes later. Just then Lucy's parents arrived. They were worried about her. The girl was taken to the hospital. Harvey, along with her parents, were in the hallway when the doctor came out of the room. They all stood and looked wary, waiting to see what he would tell them. "Why are you looking at me like that? Who's her husband?" he asked. I came Harvey forward. He was waiting for the most dreadful announcement. "I congratulate you, Papa," said the doctor with a smile. "What do you mean, Dad?" Harvey didn't understand. "A miracle has happened. Your wife is pregnant?" The doctor smiled even wider. "That can't be," he muttered. "But it has happened, and if you take care of your wife and treat her well, in 7 months you will be the happy daddy of a second child," the doctor told him. "I love you," he hugged him. "Hey, be careful," the doctor pulled away from him. "Can I go see her?" asked Harvey and looked at her parents. "Of course you can, and she's conscious. She's just a little sick. You'll have to stay here for a couple days," the doctor allowed him, and they went straight into the room. "Darling, did you hear that?" He hugged her. "Yes, and I don't believe it happens." She looked at him and at her parents with happy eyes. They sat in her room for a while longer, then left her to rest, said goodbye, and went home. "John, well, I congratulate you. Your father has come home." "With what?" The boy looked at him. "You're going to be a big brother soon," Harvey told him. "That can't be," he wondered. "The doctor just told us that, and if we treat our mom well, we'll be fine." Harvey hugged his son, and together they went to bed. 2 days passed, and they all went to pick Lucy up from the hospital. All the family was happy. "Do you believe it yourself?" her mother asked her. "I don't know, but if the doctor says so, why not believe?" She shrugged her shoulders. "Does it ever happen?" Harvey asked her. "Look, lately I believe in everything that happens. If someone leaves this life, it means they're making room for someone else," Lucy said. "So my mom left for a reason. She made room for our baby." Harvey was sure. "It turns out so," she shrugged. Now parents, husband and son, treated mom very reverently. They were paying attention to all the changes in her behavior and in general to everything she had been doing lately. "I love you," Harvey whispered to her every day and night. "God, my love, you have no idea how much happiness you have brought into my life." His wife hugged him. "That's it. Let's spit so we don't jinx it." He spit over his shoulder. To ensure that everything went well, Lucy did not wait for anything, and a month before the due date of labor, she went to the hospital. Harvey was nervous. Remembering his first experience, he was already afraid, especially since Lucy wasn't exactly healthy. "Beloved, you have a daughter born, and John has a baby sister," she called him herself. Harvey purposely did not call and did not find out anything, so as not to worry. And now that he found out everything, he was the happiest man in the world. 5 days passed. Lucy had to be picked up from the maternity hospital. Harvey and John and her parents were on their way there. "Harvey, maybe you'll move in with us. Things will be easier," his mother-in-law suggested to him. "We need to consult with Lucy." He looked at the woman. "Okay," she nodded, knew she would probably agree. "Hi, love. Congratulations." She wheeled out of the ward door with the baby in her arms. Lucy was hugged by her father and mother. They'd offered her what they'd only offered Harvey in the car. "How do you feel about it?" She looked at her husband. "I'm okay with it, at least for the first time," he shrugged. "Then I'm okay with it too." Her father and husband helped her into the car. John sat next to his mom and looked at his baby sister. "Will you take her around?" Lucy looked at him. "Of course, if you let me. I will walk with the stroller in the yard," he promised his mom. Everything will be. Lucy was happy, especially from the fact that in her life appeared that person, which she was promised, will never be. It took a trip home to pack, but they were already ready, as it were. After that, everyone got back in the car and drove to the place where Lucy herself had spent her childhood. How did you agree to this? Lucy asked her husband. I got a job back at my father's factory, so I'll be home less often now, he whispered in her ear. I love you. She realized she had chosen the right man. And he really realized that if it wasn't for this man in his life, he would have nothing. They arrived home. His parents had set aside a separate room for the kids and for the parents. Mommy, Daddy, you're the best. Lucy thanked them. Thank you for your daughter. Harvey came up to them and hugged them. It was the first time it was clear that the girl's parents had forgiven the guy. She came up to them, and John came up to them. It was a strong and happy family.